All right, I'd like to call the Plan Commission meeting for Monday, July 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. to order. Roll call and declaration of a quorum.
All right. So, oops. I think my internet might be a little slow. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So Cronin,
Here.
Zagami,
Here.
Ermeling,
Here.
Gurn,
Here.
Jordan,
Here.
Lumper,
Here.
Pinsenalt,
Present.
Maloney,
Yes.
and Deason. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, number 3. Roll call and declaration of a quorum by Secretary Parker for the ETZ.
Okay. Christensen,
Here.
Cronin,
Here.
Gurnt,
Here.
Hull,
Here.
Lumper,
Here.
and Olson.
Here.
All right, next item on the agenda would be public comments. Do we have anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a public comment? I have to ask 3 times. Anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a public comment? And for the 3rd time, anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a public comment?
I mean, it looks like there are people online. I'm guessing that's for some of the other public hearings.
Nobody has their hand up?
But nobody has their hand up currently, no?
For later on
Yeah.
stuff, yeah, for the green hack addition.
Is it, if it's on an agenda item, we can do it at that time if you'd like to do that. Okay, hearing no comments currently, we'll move on to item number 4, minutes from previous meetings. Minutes from the June 13th, 2022 joint PC and ETZ meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Oh wait, is that, I'm sorry, that's the ETC joint meeting, not the Plan Commission minutes? I'm sorry.
Did I miss?
No, I wanted to make a,
They're with the minutes from,
okay, so,
that was the last meeting, they were both here.
all right, so that includes all Plan Commission agenda items in as well?
I'm not following you.
There was a question about the procedure on an introduction of a motion at the Plan Commission meeting, or an introduction of an amendment to the motion. I just wanted to clarify, I guess, how amendment should be handled. Is that part of this approval, part of this particular item?
Are you looking to change the minutes?
No, I'm not looking to change, I just want to make a comment about what was introduced and what the process should be on introducing an amendment to a motion. Is that
I don't know.
Jermaine? Okay, it was item 11 on the Plan Commission agenda last time. It's page 13 of the packet. Okay, so as stated in the minutes, Commissioner Ermeling had requested a condition be added, an amendment to the motion to Commissioner Pinsenalt, who had made the motion. And I think in the future, as an amendment is, if an amendment is desired to be added by any member of the body, the member can make the motion, can propose an amendment to the motion. It didn't have to be requested of the person making the motion. So then you would be asking for a second to the amendment first. So I think there was a misunderstanding of how that was done. So if this were to occur again and somebody wants to make an amendment to a motion, you're entitled to do that. If there's no discussion in the action and discussion starts without a second, then it's, I guess, a de facto second.
Yes.
So you do want to seek a second on a amendment to the motion. So just a point of clarification for the commission. Does that make sense?
So the amendment dies if it's
Correct.
not
There's
voted.
dies for
Okay.
lack of a motion or lack of a second unless people start discussing the item.
Okay,
But anybody can make a motion to amend, and as long as it's acted on,
Correct.
it then would be voted on.
okay.
So what that means the commission has to vote on it up or down. They can vote it down or they can approve it. That's firstly approve the motion, no, approve the amendment, then we go to the motion.
So, yeah, the introduction of the amendment and a second would all follow the same process as the original motion. It could die for lack of a second,
Correct.
so,
Or it could be voted down. either
Right.
way.
Right.
Up or down.
Okay,
sorry for the,
no, that's okay. Anything else?
no,
you'd like
that's
to
it.
add?
That's
I
it.
do see a correction, because when he said 11, I went to look for 11, and annual fancier license request is listed as 11, and so is the comprehensive plan text amendment. So that needs to be changed to 12. Because the next one is 13, unfinished business.
Okay,
So that should be corrected.
Got another amendment on page 7. It calls out in the text that all the commissioners were present, but in the words it says 0. 0 alternates were present, but 1 alternate was present. Top of the page on 7, number 2.
It's page 7 of the packet, correct?
yeah, under item number 2, 7 PC members present and 0 alternates were present, but Maloney was present. Any other corrections? I'll entertain a motion on item number 4.
Move to approve minutes from the plan commission meeting.
I'll second.
Motion by Jordan, second by Aaron. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So carried. Item number 5, written communications received. Do we have any?
I don't have any.
All right, no communications received. Next item on the agenda, we had a request to move item number 7 up and do that first. As we have someone online who needs to be present at another meeting. Is the plan commission okay with that? ETZ okay with that?
Yes.
All right, so we will jump ahead to item number 7, which is going to be project number 2022-0188, Hunter Sawicki, 143612, County Road C, Mosinee, Wisconsin, 54455, requesting a conditional use permit to allow an expansion of a personal storage facility within the LI Limited Industrial Zoning District at 7804 Service Lane, Unit 6 and 9, pin number 192-2808-233-0024. Going to open the public hearing and presentation by staff.
All right, so Plan Commission saw this 2 years ago for the initial construction of 2 of the units into a personal storage facility. The facility is under new ownership and the new owner is looking to add 11 further units to the structure. All internal, no exterior alteration would be done, and there'd be no alteration to the existing units. So just adding 11 units throughout the system or throughout the units. And adding them there, there's a site plan, the blue ones there would be the new units. They'd be secured, they'd be temperature controlled, digital keypad. And as this is an alteration of the conditional use permit that was issued back in 2020, it does require to come back through Plan Commission for reapproval. We do have a representative online, I believe, Hunter, if you are there, you can speak in a second, otherwise we do have a representative in the house here. Hunter's not online anymore.
Nope, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, I'm here.
So he's available if Plan Commission has any questions.
All right, is that all from staff?
That's all I got.
All right, so I guess we'll move into the public comment period. Hunter, would you like to make a comment?
Sure. I guess we're looking to expand this a little bit bigger than when we first
Can you
purchased
state
it.
your name and address for the record, please?
Sorry about that. My name's Hunter Sawicki. The facility address is 7804 North Service Lane, Weston, Wisconsin. So we purchased this property shortly, about a month ago. Currently conditional use for 21 units. We're looking to add 11 more units just to fully utilize the space that's in the building. Like was said earlier, we're not going to be modifying anything on the exterior of the building and no structural changes at all.
All right, thank you, sir. Any other public comments online or in the audience? Second time, any public comments online or in the audience? And for the final time, any public comments online or in the audience? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. And recommendation from staff.
Staff recommends approval.
And discussion and action by the planning commission. What's your pleasure?
We need to do those 5 conditions.
We do. Yep.
What are the stairwell? Where does that go?
There's a mezzanine in these units, so it would lead to an upper area which is not being used for personal storage. It would all be on the lower level. No, they're not doing the mezzanine. So that would be where the stairs go.
Has there been any complaints in recent? From the prior?
Yes.
So,
Complaints for this specific unit?
yes.
I have not heard of any. Are you aware of any?
I haven't heard anything.
And that wasn't in regards to the new owner. It was the prior owner. I think he had a band that was playing there, practicing until 2 or 3 in the morning. That was keeping, I think they'd called the cops a few times, but that's why I was asking for that stairwell, what that is being used for. So there's no, these are just specifically storage units. There's no rental units that are gonna be, trying to start a rock band in there.
Based on the operation.
That'd be.
Go ahead, Hunter.
Oh. Yep, Hunter on the phone here. Yeah, previously the old owner did have small office type cubicles upstairs that he did rent out to a musician type or a radio type tenant. And we are aware that there was issues prior to that. We don't plan to be renting it out to any sort of small business or anything like that for those situations. That's part of the reason why we're looking to expand the ground level units is to, I guess, increase revenue through that versus bringing in small business type stuff upstairs.
Excellent. Thanks for your comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Hunter. Anything else from the planning commission? You ready to do the determination? Okay, item number 1 is the proposed conditional use is consistent with the comprehensive plan, this chapter, and all other plans, programs, and ordinances adopted by the village.
Yes.
The proposed conditional use in its proposed location and as depicted on the required site plan will not result in a substantial or undue adverse impact on nearby property, the character of the neighborhood, environmental factors, traffic factors, parking, public improvements, public property or rights of way, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, or general welfare, either as they now exist or as they may in the future be developed as a result of the implementation of the provisions of this chapter, the comprehensive plan, or all other plans, programs, and ordinances adopted by the village.
Yes.
Yes. Does the proposed conditional use will maintain the desired consistency of land uses, land use intensities, and land use impacts as related to the environs of the subject property?
Yes.
Yes. Is the proposed conditional use located in an area that will be adequately served by and will not impose an undue burden on any of the improvements, facilities, utilities, or services provided by public agencies serving the subject property?
Yes.
Yes. Do the public benefits of the proposed conditional use outweigh potential adverse impacts of the proposed conditional use after taking into consideration the applicant's proposal and any requirements recommended by the applicant to ameliorate such impacts?
Yes.
Yes. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Gern,
Second?
second by Jordan. And on the question? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So carried. All right, we will jump back to item number 6. Amendment to section 94.4.08, parent 1 of the zoning code relating to light industrial land use types. This is for the PC and the ETZ. I will open the public hearing and presentation by staff.
So these proposed changes stem back from a couple meetings. You might remember Norcon was in here and we were kind of discussing how to handle their situation where they had some existing trees that you were allowing them to use as screening. So this is the proposed amendment to that section of the code that we talked about. You had requested that we put something in about trees and a hedgerow, so I attempted to do that. So this would be the language that we would be proposing. The ETZ is here just because they don't have any LI property. This is actually in the LI zoning ordinance section, but it's just easier for that ETZ area if it's consistent, just in case in the future they would have something. So I don't know if I captured what you were trying to do. I know there was a couple different discussions going on, but.
Okay, so, I'm on board with what you're trying to do, Jen. I guess, the only thing that I see that might be a little difficult is trying to define mature trees. You know, so.
Right.
As an example, at Weston Supply with that, berm that we have, some small trees, I mean, trees that you could hope to survive were transplanted and didn't quite satisfy the neighbors as far as the height that they were at that particular time, but given the fact that they need some time to grow, what's your experience or what are you thinking? How are you gonna deal with that type of situation?
That was kind of a comment when you guys were talking about the hedgerow. You didn't want just little ones, you wanted them to be a little bit larger. From a staff perspective, we're gonna want it to be as simple as possible. So if you're okay with trees, I'm not exactly sure what the feeling of the Plan Commission is for screening anymore on these. Originally, the business park, and that kind of stems and it kept going from that. The business park was developed as a tech park. So there was a lot of restrictions on the outside storage. I don't know if that's necessary anymore because most of it is orderly. I don't know if you guys still want those screening requirements in there.
In LI, I think I read that somewhere in here, Jen, that you even said, or do you even want them at all?
Well, it's a struggle for us. I mean, even in the business park, we do have on the north side, there's the GI and the LI. I mean, for the most part, everyone keeps things orderly, so we don't have an issue and we don't go in there and enforce. Because there are some of them that don't have the screening, they never have. From our standpoint, it's a working industrial park. So it's just if you want something along the highway, it's really up to you guys and then ultimately the board.
I guess my input would be, if I have to say anything, would be is probably the highway if there is exterior storage, to alleviate, I mean, in their situation, they had concrete and asphalt piles there as well. I think that's probably where the hindrance was, or the look of it was, that wasn't looking the best, so.
It would be more maybe for contractor type yards where they're keeping material, but most of them will kind of screen that anyway by putting fences up or those areas just because things walk away, but yeah, it's really up to you guys.
So I guess one other thing and I don't know if this has anything to do with the zoning with it, is like Sunbelt or Roland or Fabic, where they're doing rental or potentially sales. That's in my eye.
Those are considered outdoor display for the sales area.
That's my point was.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Have them have to try to barricade or block that off. It's kind of difficult. That's what their position is to try to sell that product or rent that product. So I just wanted to make sure that we have that covered in there as well. So it was up to me. I guess most people are respectful enough to keep their stuff clean and neat and tidy. I think that was a struggle for you guys at Wassa Supply as well, but I mean, you guys did a great job with keeping your shingles to your shingles and nice and orderly piles and pallets or whatever it may be. It represents your business as well.
Right. Right, so I like the idea of you having the ability to have some requirement for some trees that will eventually grow and mature. And, so I think that, over time, it evolves into a much better looking thing if we actually have some. So I'd like to, I'd like to have some requirement for that you guys could ask people to do without having to get into a really lengthy description, and I understand that's what you really struggle with. So the idea of not having anything, I'm not in favor of that.
Well, I think wouldn't the landscaping requirements still require some, but it wouldn't be to the extent of a screening. So there would be a requirement for some type of vegetation or trees kind of spread out along the property, but it wouldn't be like a continuous hedgerow or a fence.
Yeah.
So it depends on the look that you want there, I guess.
Should it depend on the use? Like you said, Sunbelt is more, here, we want you to see this stuff so you can sell it and rent it. Whereas we don't want you to see our pile of crushed concrete.
Yeah.
So, because this applies to all LI, is that correct?
Use, limited industrial use, so Sunbelt would be outdoor display. LI and limited industrial land use would be more contractor yards, storage of materials. So this is specifically not for the zoning district, but for the land use limited industrial, which, yeah, gets a little confusing with it being the same as the zoning district.
But I think you're basically stating that you would like the authority to have something, if somebody was gonna have a yard, you want, whether is that more or less, does staff make that approval? If it's a contractor yard versus a display, or if somebody's got outside inventory storage?
Well, the display comes because they're selling it, so there's provisions about display, so and it's gotta be a certain percentage of their property usually. This tends to be more of the active industrial park properties that are doing the light industrial. That's where your contractors fall also. And they're the ones that usually have the yards. There is a provision, so like in Joe's case with Wassa Supply, or I think Applied Laser used it too. There was some changes made because they were continually going through it looked like it was still always staying there, but their stuff outside was, they were bringing more stuff and it was going out. So they did add some provisions in for that type of a use. But it's hard for people to understand that, yes, it looks like it's not moved, but it really has. Because that's just how they cycle their product out.
And I think, again, I look at even coming down the road here, you've got next to the old the landscaping company here that's selling landscaping by Gus's place. Instead of putting a fence up, he put a, nice seed container up. Granted, it fences off and shields what's behind it, but I think that goes back to the discussion of what's allowed, how can you use the fencing, and how do you make it look professional, right? Without making the neighbors ticked off because looks like a junkyard there.
Right.
But I think that's what Joe is saying too, is I think we want to make sure that you have that authority to say something in case it does look crappy, right? But you don't want to give a free will and say, no, there is no restriction.
I just don't think I can come up with a way to define this black and white for you.
Right.
And I feel good about the staff using the ability to discuss this with the potential site user to come up with something that makes sense to you as staff members, knowing what it is that we want this to look like long-term.
Could we add something at the discretion of the site plan authority?
You could, as a catch-all, I guess, yeah.
Would be the devil's advocate, Jen. What happens when you have somebody that purchases a building later on and they, all of a sudden becomes a junkyard in the parking lot.
Well,
What authority do you have at that point?
it would be like normal for anything, it would probably go underneath the property maintenance aspect of it, or you still can enforce under these, I mean, they're still supposed to keep their properties. So basically, we would talk to them first and say, you know, we've gotten some complaints, can you clean this up? And if they don't cooperate or even look like they're going to, is when we would get, either through the citation process or ultimately it would go through circuit court.
And you have that ability to do that even though they don't have to have something, that there's not something in the code that's.
There's other sections of the code about neat and orderly and things like that. So if somebody's just taking pallets and chucking them out, you know, there's probably something that we can enforce on.
But that's a long process. I mean.
Any of them, anything is going to be a long process. I know a lot of people think that we can, you know, just get things done overnight. I mean, we've got a hoarder situation that just is finally moving, and we asked the board last fall to actually start.
Because I mean, it just for some personal residential things that are.
Yeah, nothing, anytime we have to
It takes
enforce.
forever to get.
Yes, it takes a long time. We try to work with people first, so it takes a lot for us to get to that end point where we're actually getting attorneys involved and things like that. So
Because I know,
most of the time, people comply after you kind of go and talk to them, so.
well, that's why I'm concerned when you've got, you know, industrial area that, yes, you might keep yours nice and clean, but the next guy that comes in might not. And what kind of, you know, if you have no screening, you have no requirements, what, you know, what can you do with that? And I've had lots of calls, even with WASA. Material is, well, they got stuff packed outside. I can see that. Well, you know.
Don't look over there.
Yeah.
I can
It's an
do,
industrial park.
we can leave it open. I can do some more research on it. Maybe there's some language I can find about things being neat and orderly.
Roy, how do you
That's
feel about it?
something.
What's your opinion?
I think, I like the idea of having some flexibility in this, which I think was what we're trying to add. I also think it's difficult to make something perfect.
It is.
I mean, it's really tough. Because situations arise, you know, do you have a lot that has a berm, and now you say, well, is that enough? Or do you need to, you know, just a natural situation?
So because your fence can be 6 foot high, if your berm is 6 foot high, is that fine? Because ultimately, what's the fence doing if it's not any higher than 6 foot anyway, right?
Well, the fence can be higher than that.
No, I'm saying.
I'm just saying that, you know, as an
Right.
example.
I mean, sometimes they're not even covering, things are over top of it.
Yeah.
But I think it's important along the highway or whatever, if you've got something, you know, kind of.
Shane, what's your opinion on it? What's your thoughts?
It's, I'm not sure.
I'm personally, I think the language that we added, I think gives more flexibility than was already currently allowed in the code. So me personally, I'm okay with the way it's written, with how it's written in right now.
And I am too. It's just the idea that I want staff to leave here with the idea that they have some flexibility in trying to construct something that would meet the requirements without having something that's just black and white.
Do we want to add earthen berms in here, Joe? I mean, I think that's what the village did with the industrial park, right? They put earthen berms up.
Yeah, there's.
You're saying that the residents or the duplexes or whatever around it said, well, geez, I can still see those trees, you know?
Well, yeah, so the berm is probably, you know, when you talk about street grade, is probably only 4 feet high. So anybody that's in their house that's 2 feet above the street, you know, so the reality is a 6 foot berm is anywhere near enough. If you put a 6 foot fence on it, now you're starting to get there, you know, to what.
But what I was getting at is what's the minimum requirement on that, Jen? 6 foot? Or do you even require any higher than that?
I think that it says you can use anything to the maximum, which I think is 8.
10.
10 feet,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so you can just do whatever to the maximum.
And minimum is what, 6? On commercial or light industrial?
There is no minimum really, I mean, whatever is gonna screen it, you know, so.
But what do you, I mean, how many times, how do you screen a semi-trailer that's sitting for a storage? You know,
Typically,
You're not gonna
in a
screen it.
residential area, the front, like, they don't allow anything over 4 feet along the street frontage, but that's in a residential.
can we address it by saying that's serving or abutting a residential?
There's other requirements,
Michael?
I don't know if we're gonna really have a whole lot of that.
I was just wondering, I mean, this one says all adjacent properties, is the issue strictly adjacent residential properties, or is it all properties? I guess I'm hearing people saying residential seems to be an issue, but maybe not.
There's already provisions to take care of residential,
Okay,
because there's a buffer yard that's required.
sure.
So this is specific to,
So this is saying that they need it no matter what, where they're at. So if you want it to be residential, the majority of them aren't gonna have to have it, because we don't really have anything that's adjacent to residential. Even his berm, the berm is owned by the village, so technically it's not adjacent to,
Well, there's residential behind it.
there
Berm
is.
is zoned
But the berm is zoned
institutional.
institutional, because it's a village-owned property.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's, I've gotten complaints is because then they don't need fencing or whatever because
They
village
basically
has-
have a giant wall.
the village owns the property between it?
yeah.
Yeah, we still own the berm.
So,
get the
so then at that
complaints.
point, is it the responsibility of the person that's applying for the permit that needs to put a fence before the berm? Or is it, I mean, ultimately, if you're saying that, it sounds like Wassa Supply should have been responsible for putting a fencing up or something. Because they don't own the property where the berm's on. I'm not trying to-
They don't have any outside storage area by anything right now.
Yeah, there is a few houses on the far east end of the parking area.
And they have a fence there.
And we actually constructed a fence that's much higher than the berm. And did that because we really wanted to keep the neighbors happy, right, you know.
And on the west side, where the,
Yeah, the west side will become a problem now.
Yeah.
As we continue to expand, but
where they could potentially see out their back window and see the shingles piled up or whatever on pallets but they were needed already. I mean, and you guys compromised by putting landscaping around in front of it so you couldn't see it from the roadway. Yeah, that's a struggle. I think it's,
No matter what you do, however you do it, it still is a problem.
yeah,
that's why they're saying it's
I'm not sure.
some kind of flexibility, right?
Yeah,
It
what
just
do you
depends
want to
on what
do?
you want to see, because whatever we put in the code, we can justify to people who are complaining, typically.
How many complaints do we get on that?
On that,
Yeah,
not a whole lot anymore. I mean, since there's been some movement at Wassa Supply, we've had people calling, quite a few about that, but they just want to know what's going on there.
but any other parcels besides the industrial park that you've gotten anybody to complain saying, hey, I see this and I don't want to see it? And I'm assuming that's because it's only a 4-foot berm or something, it's not high enough or whatever.
Not usually. I mean, there's anything that's been newer in the industrial park that's been along, some of the residential that's along Schofield Avenue over there has had that 25-foot buffer yard, so, or they've lived adjacent to it for a while.
So if you have a 25-foot buffer yard, you don't have to put a fence up? Or a hedge or tree or?
It can be a fence. Isn't it just a landscaping requirement?
Yeah.
So I think the last one we had was the Lamers site. And they put a fence up.
Like a shielded fence or something? Is that because there was
Yeah.
residential in the back or something?
Correct, yeah.
Because it was an ally property.
I think if this is just more related to neighbors inside the LI, not residential, because we have a separate ordinance for that. I'm fine with it the way it is.
You've got, I'll just say, for those duplexes, it's kind of unique. I used to get calls constantly till I finally told the guy he made me angry. But anyway,
But Mark, honestly, if you think about this, that was, I don't mean to say it's self-inflicted, that was self-inflicted, or whoever decided to put a 4-foot berm up on there should have really put a berm up higher.
that was the village.
I know, that's my point.
Right, and
So
what they
we
were
have
saying,
rules
but
for everybody
they're
else.
between like a rock and a hard place. And I won't know the term correctly, but there's a very small berm, there's an industrial area, small berm, and then there's duplexes, which are considered transitional housing.
Sure.
So they're now all of a sudden are not treated the same as what you have on a single
Residential, yeah.
residential.
There were some issues in the past too with the way that was marketed a long time ago, because I remember getting calls from people when there started to be activity in that first edition of the industrial park where realtors had told them that that was going to be housing. And it had always been on the maps as industrial, but they just had never called. So we really don't get a whole lot of complaints on that. It's just on how you want to see it. It's always been a struggle for us as staff because it's always required them to be screened. I mean, everyone has something out there. Even if they don't initially have it, their businesses change and they do. It's just part of an industrial use.
The adjacent properties part, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, for LI to LI, we're both doing a similar sort of thing,
Right.
right?
They're
So
all
do we
doing-
have to screen from each other? I mean, you guys work in that area, do you have a problem with?
I mean,
that stuff?
prior zoning codes, they had, because when LNS actually expanded, I couldn't figure out why they were so close to the railroad tracks. And originally, the code back in the 60s, if you were at like a GI or an LI property, they didn't have a side yard setback. They went right up and there was a lot of different things that happened there because it was an industrial use. And of course, they were on the railroad line there, but I don't know, we tend to not get complaints. I mean, I don't think I've had any on between industrial park properties.
I can appreciate you guys even doing this, because I know, for instance, at our shop, when we brought ours in, our fence was $154,000 before COVID hit, the shielded fence. And then once we went to order it, it went to 356 or set, whatever it was. It doubled, and that's a lot of money to fence in a whole yard. It's just a lot.
Struggle for a lot of years, even with what type of fencing and screening, because you know, there was the whole slat thing and then they didn't
Then
hit the
there's
slat.
fabric like Lincoln Contractors, and it falls off after X amount of years.
Right, it just doesn't, you don't, a chain link
You gotta
fence doesn't,
Release it again because now we got open fencing and.
right.
If I could just, you maybe want to look at subsection A and C and D around this B. And Emily provided that as the after amendment. Those are the next couple pages in here. And I think that might address some of the topics you're talking about here under the performance standards. If you just walk through those, that might give you some comfort as to how it fits in for that section.
Yeah, it starts on page 25. It gave you what the entire section looks like.
And I would defer to the longer term members, but do you want to have even that much restriction in the town?
Well, there is no LI in the town.
But if one came in.
And I guess that's why if you look at the section, the way that I interpret it is the emphasis in the section is really that if you are doing anything outside, it has to be fully screened from outdoor storage. And it's from LI to LI adjacent parcels is really what the focus is, because the buffer yard section and the reference to the residential section is down in D. So what the insertion that she suggested puts in, as Steve mentioned, actually just gives you some vegetation, hedgerow and trees. But the standard is it still has to be designed to completely screen all stored materials from view from all adjacent properties. So it currently says, the standard is you have to have everything screened, and you can only use buildings, structures, walls, and or fencing now. And now you're just adding trees and hedgerow as vegetation in addition. So the standard doesn't really change. It still is supposed to be completely screened.
And I feel that's unrealistic.
Well, and that's why I think she brought it up as a point is, are we really holding and want to hold it to that standard? But I guess my point was, if you are talking about adjusting it, then I don't think you just need to change B, as Jennifer suggested. She might have to take it back, because this whole section pretty much emphasizes that it has to be completely screened, that those certain activities have to be screened. So that's why I just say, don't be too tunnel visioned on B if you're really talking about the whole concept of, are we really looking to hold people to a fully, completely screened of all storage materials? Is that the standard you want to keep or not? Because if it is, then the more things you put in there give you more variety, but the standard doesn't change at all.
Yeah, agreed. Good point.
The public notice does cover the entire land use, so that can be tweaked at this time for A.
Anything else for staff? Otherwise, I'm gonna take it to the public comment period.
I guess I'll ask staff, is our own industrial park compliant right now?
Yeah, some of them aren't. The GI properties are, because they have a different restriction. They're just supposed to be 100 feet from residentially zoned property. Those are all interior of the business parking lot. So, no, I'm sure there's some that do not meet this requirement right now.
I'm assuming there's probably a lot of them, because I think back at that time, we tried to have this conversation and said it's unrealistic. It's not a technology, it's an industrial park. Strictly technology where you keep everything in the inside. I have a hard time understanding or even thinking that we would take any kind of exterior storage or exterior building.
There's a few properties out there that don't, that's not their business.
Yes, you're right, 100%. You're right. There's some that don't have absolutely anything outside. But then there's some that really need to have the storage outside. So.
All right, move to the public comment period. Is there anybody present tonight or online that would like to make a public comment on this matter? Second time, anybody present here tonight or online that would like to make a comment? And for the third time, anybody present here tonight or online that would like to make a comment? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Recommendation from staff. I have a hunch, I already know what that is.
My recommendation was included in there with the changes. I guess I would suggest that we put something in similar to what Jim did, maybe as an out, that the site plan approval authority. So, I mean, I can come up with some type of wording that gives us a little bit more discretion based off of what they're doing out there, or we can just make it come here.
What was your suggestion, Jim?
Along the lines of,
At the
at the discretion of the site plan authority.
Let's say plan or planning commission. I think it was, and also you mentioned LI to LI. If you're bounded by an LI and you're not in a residential area, you both probably have the same zoning. That's the difference. You're looking at each other's stuff.
Yeah, remove the requirement for from all adjacent properties. Just strike that line completely, because it covers in letter D abutting residentially zoned property. So if you're LI to LI, you probably don't need it.
So you just wanna keep the screening of right of way. So that would be like the highway.
From where the public can see it, correct? Whether it's from the highway or from the roadway. And we maybe, what do you think about mature trees, hedgerow, just change that to natural vegetation or earthen berm? If it's a 40-foot high berm, I bet you.
Well, I think we gotta put a minimum requirement on a berm, right, or something, is there strictly, I forget, Emily, if you said no, but is the minimum, there is no really minimum height on a fence?
Correct.
So you could put a fence up and say, well, that's my shielded fence, even though you can see half of what I'm storing in here.
But
Well,
it's
but there's the
completely
line that's,
screened.
yeah,
You're not gonna
designed.
get it to completely screen, cause your maximum fence is only gonna be 10 foot high.
Then we need to change the maximum fence height. They have that in here too?
They put the berm sometime and put the tree at the top of the berm.
Yeah. So what do we do at the top of the fence when the fence isn't screening enough? And the fence
Fence
is only,
doesn't work. Fence, you can go 8 feet, 10 feet, whatever, that's for it. And if they go above it, they go above it. It's always a problem.
So what about in, say on 441 in Appleton, do you consider that a fence where it's like a 20-foot high concrete wall?
Sound barrier.
Sure, I mean, that looks okay and that would screen from public view, right? So is that acceptable?
Be extremely costly.
Sure, but is that acceptable? If the guy has an unlimited checkbook, can we say we can't build that?
Is that the one DOT put it up?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's a taxpayer money.
We do that a lot around here,
That's an open check, not around here. I haven't seen it. That's,
on the road a little bit.
Jen, is this something you can bring back with some verbiage that you guys understand what we're trying to get at? We wanna have, and I think you guys are trying to do the same thing, cause it's kind of a pain.
Right.
Yeah,
Is there any possibility you can say in here, if it is a nuisance, staff or whoever, planning authority has, the right to cure with you as an owner or something if it's unsightly? Something to the effect?
We can look into it.
Everybody happy with that? So no action tonight, staff's gonna bring it back. That's what I'm hearing.
So can we take no action or do you wanna?
Defer
You
action
can
to
defer
the,
it to the next meeting.
defer to the following meeting.
Move to defer.
Motion by Bumper,
Second?
second by Pincinel. On the question? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So carried.
ETZ has to come back.
So they have to defer to.
For motion to adjourn the ETZ committee?
You have to
You got-
defer.
Oh, we gotta defer. Is there a motion for the ETZ to defer this to next meeting?
So moved.
For second?
Sorry, guys.
Second. Second. Motion made second to defer it for the ETZ committee to the next meeting. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion to adjourn the ETZ committee?
Make motion to adjourn the ETZ meeting?
For a second?
I'll second.
Motion made second to adjourn the ETZ committee. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. Item number 8, project number 2022-0213. Matthew Wesnick, 3605 Holland Ave, Weston, requesting a conditional use permit to allow a holding tank for a single-family residence within the RR5 Rural Residential 5 Acre Zoning District at 8902 Wesnick Street, per section 94.3.03, parent 13C. I will open the public hearing and presentation by staff.
All right, so staff's been reviewing a single-family home permit for 8902 Wesnick Street. The accompanying sanitary permit issued from Marathon County states the proposed septic system as only being able to be a holding tank for that property. Per village ordinance, the village does not permit holding tanks regularly. It requires a conditional use permit approved by Plan Commission in order for that to be the septic system for this property. So I clipped the two sections there that just state not permitted with the conditional use requirement. Yeah, that's the case in front of you.
Question. They have a drain field, then they have a holding tank? No?
Strictly
Just-
holding tank.
Just holding tank?
Matt, how big a, 5,000 gallon holding tank?
I thought Marathon County doesn't approve just holding tank.
Yeah, they do.
They do?
They do. I thought they could.
Okay, public comment period. Is there anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment?
We have the applicant here, my commissioners.
If you could step up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Matt Wesnick from 3605 Howland Avenue. I guess I don't understand why they don't allow holding tanks. Is there a reason they don't want holding tanks?
Scott or anybody like to elaborate on that?
I can address it to some level, I guess it depends on where you'd be located relative to public sewer and water. And I think the presence of a holding tank just, is not a good long-term solution, has, I think, been kind of a conventional wisdom, I believe, and, I guess so, for that, I guess if you were near enough to the public sewer and water, there would probably be a request or a requirement to extend public sewer. In this case, you're really pretty remote.
I'm about at least a mile away from.
Exactly, so but that's the reason for bringing them to this committee or commission.
Yeah, I think the preference is that they would want you to hook on the sewer and water if it's close enough.
Okay.
They don't want you to,
Well,
which you're not, that's why you're.
I don't believe that's an option.
Nor do we.
I think everybody here would probably agree.
Okay.
But there are some situations where we wouldn't necessarily want the holding tanks. So that's why that was put in many years ago.
Yeah, so the soil conditions on your property,
They don't allow any other, there's a A plus zero.
A plus zero, A plus.
Yeah,
okay,
system, it didn't even pass for that, to be able to put that in. So my only option is holding tank.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else for Mr. Wozniak?
I was just gonna say, you were saying, why don't they like them? I think at some point in time, there was people that were kind of pumping their own out. And things like that. Because I think you have to be on with a contract
Yes.
and with a plumber and, a system thing, and they come, but I think that was some of the issues that the county back when was having, is people were, even though they had them come in, apparently if they used them a little more than they should, they would take care of it themselves.
Yeah, don't they require you then to meter your water use?
Yep.
Yeah, I think they changed some things.
We gotta, they meter it and then the pumping guy is supposed to monitor that, making sure you're not dumping it out onto the ground.
They did have to put some restrictions because it was
I remember that.
too easily.
Out west. Part of the county.
So the other aspect to your question then is the possible impact of neighboring property if you're not following those rules, I guess would be.
Oh, yeah, I understand, and I had to sign, for the county, I had to sign a pumping agreement with, I got it through Modern Sewer.
Sure.
Fairfield County's been pretty good with their maintenance program. They've
Yeah.
been really getting it, very much on top of it in the last year or two. And I know they've got a program over the next couple of years to get all the tanks into compliance.
Anything else, sir, you'd like to add?
I don't think so. The only other thing, the main reason I'm there is the family farm. And I bought some of it, and that's where I want to be. Otherwise, if I was out just looking for property, I wouldn't have probably bought it.
fair enough.
So
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience or online that wishes to make a public comment? Third and final time, anybody online that wishes to, or in the audience that wishes to make a public comment? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And recommendation from staff.
Staff recommends approval.
And what's your pleasure, planning commission? What would you like to do?
With the mayor's question,
All right. Item number 1 is the proposed conditional use consistent with the comprehensive plan, this chapter, and all other plans, programs, and ordinances adopted by the village.
Yes.
Yes. Number 2, the proposed conditional use in its proposed location and as depicted on the required site plan will not result in a substantial or undue adverse impact on nearby property, character of the neighborhood, environmental factors, traffic factors, parking, public improvements, public property or rights of way, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, or general welfare, either as they now exist or as they may in the future be developed as a result of the implementation of the provisions of this chapter, the comprehensive plan, or all other plans, programs, and ordinances adopted by the village. Yes. Does the proposed conditional use will maintain the desired consistency of land uses, land use intensities, and land use impacts as related to the end rounds of the subject property?
Yes.
Yes. Is the proposed conditional use located in an area that will be adequately served by and will not impose an undue burden on any of the improvements, facilities, utilities, or services provided by public agencies serving the subject property?
Yes.
Yes. Do the potential public benefits of the proposed conditional use outweigh potential adverse impacts of the proposed conditional use after taking into consideration the applicant's proposal and any requirements recommended by the applicant to ameliorate such impacts?
Yes.
Yes. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Garrett, second by Mumford. On the question? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 9, project number 2022-0214, Matt Keeney. W17015. Oh, hang on a sec. No, that is right. W17015 Maple Road, Wittenberg, Wisconsin 54499, requesting a conditional use permit at 5102 Look Street to allow for Section 94.4.02 Parent 1 GNH to be waived and modified within the SFS Single Family Residential Small Lot Zoning District. I'll open the public hearing and presentation by staff.
All right, so this is another single-family home permit that staff is looking at. In the single-family residential performance standards, there's a requirement that there be so much house facing the front yard as well as a percentage that the amount of garages facing the front yard not exceed a certain percentage. The front yard is defined as the street of which the house will access from. This is a corner lot. And so the way this has been designed is the garage is on Look Street where the front of the main portion of the house faces Barclay. So in essence, Look Street would be the front of the house for this property and has, I think it's like 98% garage and 7 feet of house, as you can see from the elevations. So this would just be a conditional use to waive that requirement to reduce it down to 7 feet for house facing the front of the property, which would be Look Street, down to 7 feet, and then down to, or increase it to 84% for the amount of garage facing the front yard. And typically, this is the first corner lot for a single family house that I've worked with in the last 2.5 years. Usually, most developers fit them to the lot. But this is certainly another way to design it. It just doesn't quite meet as written.
You know, there's a few homes out in the Sandy Meadow subdivision out where I live that look exactly like this, and I don't see any issue.
The applicant may be online for comment.
Yeah, Matt is on.
Okay, Matt is online.
Any other questions for staff? All right, we'll move to public comment period. Is there anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment? Anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment?
It appears the applicant is online.
Yes, I am online. It's simply, it's just a better way to fit with the small.
Would you like to make a comment, sir?
Sure. This is Matt Keeney.
Can you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Yeah, Matt Keeney, W17015 Maple Road, Wittenberg. Yeah, the reason we're proposing to do this is it just, with the small setbacks on the lot, it seems to fit better to do the end entrance on the garage. And we've done it numerous times before. We're a builder in the area, so.
Can you speak up a little bit, sir? I think we're all having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, I said, we've done this numerous times in other neighborhoods in the Wausau area. It just, the house fits better on the lot by doing this end entrance on the garage. So that's simply why we're proposing it.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add, sir?
Nope, I don't think so.
Anybody from the Plan Commission have any questions for Mr. Keeney? All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Anybody else in the audience or online that wishes to make a comment, third and final time? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. Recommendation from staff.
Staff recommends approval.
Discussion and action by Plan Commission. Would you like to go through the determination?
Yep. Before we do that, can I just make a point? We've got that wording wrong, or I think every time I've gone through this. On the first one, there was an extra is, which was not on the second and third one in point 1. And then point 3 has got that, it just does the proposed conditional use, strike the word will, I think.
Yep, will would be out, and that's actually how it's written in the code. So it's a note that the next time we go into that section, we need to change.
Okay.
And I'll make a permanent note on it.
You said the other one was in section 1?
If you look at the first one, the first conditional one they handed out, it says, is the proposed conditional use is consistent.
Yeah, I noticed that too when I was reading it.
Okay.
But then when I looked at the second and third one, that's not in those.
Okay.
All right, item number 1, is the proposed conditional use consistent with the comprehensive plan, this chapter, and all other plans, programs, and ordinances adopted by the village?
Yes.
Yes. Number 2, the proposed conditional use and its proposed location and as depicted on the required site plan will not result in a substantial or undue adverse impact on nearby property, the character of the neighborhood, environmental factors, traffic factors, parking, public improvements, public property or rights of way, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, or general welfare, either as they now exist or as they may in the future be developed as a result of the implementation of the provisions of this chapter, the comprehensive plan, or all other plans, programs, and ordinances adopted by the village?
Yes.
Yes. Does the proposed conditional use maintain the desired consistency of land uses, land use intensities, and land use impacts as related to the environs of the subject property?
Yes.
Number 4, is the proposed conditional use located in an area that will be adequately served by and will not impose an undue burden on any of the improvements, facilities, utilities, or services provided by public agencies serving the subject property?
Yes.
Number 5, does the potential public benefits of the proposed conditional use outweigh potential adverse impacts of the proposed conditional use after taking into consideration the applicant's proposal and any requirements recommended by the applicant to ameliorate such impacts?
Yes.
Yes. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Gerd,
Second.
second by Jordan. On the question? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. So carried. Number 10, project number 2022. Hang on a sec. Is Matt still online?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Matt. I'm sure he can hear us.
He's muted right now.
He just put up his hand.
Okay. Number 10, project number 2022-0215, Mike Moore. 4080 North 20th Ave, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54401, on behalf of DC Everest Area School District. Requesting a conditional use permit to allow a proposed principal structure where the structure would exceed the maximum allowed height of 45 feet by 27.75 feet on property known as 6400 Alderson Street, described as Lot 1 of proposed CSM to be recorded in 2022, located in the northeast quarter of the northeast quarter and part of the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter of section 19 T28N R8E Village of Weston, Marathon County, Wisconsin. PIN number 192-2808-191-0999. The building is proposed to be 72.75 feet tall. We'll open the public hearing and presentation by staff.
All right, so DC Everest School District is planning a future community center to be attached to the current Green Heck Fieldhouse with some other alterations. Part of the project, the future community center is proposed to be 72.75 feet high. This exceeds the maximum of 45 feet for a principal structure in the institutional zoning district. And this has been brought forward for Plan Commission's review of the conditional use permit. This is the beginning of several projects that are going on the project, on the site. And so barring the decision from this, the school district will move forward with the project. The community center will have an indoor turf field, jump pit, full-size field, batting cages. It'll really be seen as a regional piece for the area. And we have several representatives here from DC Everest if Plan Commission has questions.
Any other questions for staff?
I guess my question is just, has there been any feedback from people that are not in favor of having that tall of a building in the area?
We've received a couple phone calls directing them if they wish to give input to either give us something in writing or to attend this meeting. I didn't take those phone calls, so I'm not sure if they're present here.
Is it higher than the Green Heck?
It would
Fieldhouse?
be, it's a
How much?
little bit higher. You can kind of see the difference. So they're actually redoing the front, so they'll be redesigning right now where you would actually step up. You will no longer go up those steps. Everything's gonna be at entry level in. So they're redesigning the front of it.
Is Mike here?
Yeah, Mike's here.
Mike,
Gary?
could you answer the question of what is the existing street height?
Street elevation is like 1242, finished floor is 1218 and a half.
Okay. So my personal opinion on it is I'm looking at it as if I'm gonna be at the street elevation and then I add 75 feet, I might have a struggle with it. But we already have a drop in land of, what is it, 30 some feet?
25-ish.
25? Okay, that's all I have for question. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, go ahead, sir.
What is the height of, like, the north end of the hockey rink from the level of that parking lot?
It's going over.
You understand my question?
From the parking lot?
There's a parking lot that's on the north end of that hockey.
1229.6, so you're from the finished floor of the existing, for the new facility, it would be 11 feet higher for that parking lot.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry, I just had the plans right here.
Yeah.
It just didn't give me the road elevation out by the road.
Anything else for staff? All right, hearing none, I'll open the public comment period. Is there anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a public comment on this matter? Sir, if you'd like to step up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Keith Kazmerchek and I live at 6409 Alderson, which is directly across from it. And not really in favor of the way it's kind of laid out. Being squared with Alderson, we're catching the full brunt of it.
Back to the height.
By the height, yeah, it's quite a ways up there, because in a sense, you're almost 30 feet higher from the existing Green Heck roof. which puts it up there. And I mean, this is a big unit.
So Mike, what did you say the road was?
About 1242.
1242? 18.
So this is actually on the southern parcel, not the one that's shaded on the map. It's this one.
It's the pink on the map,
Right.
Yes.
But I'm looking at where you are located compared to
right.
where
on the east end,
the
right?
property is.
Pretty much where his hand was, if he goes down to the second driveway, next one down, that one's ours right there.
That's literally across the street.
Yeah. So,
Is it blocking your view or what?
yeah, and I mean, it's still a big slab of metal we're looking at. Even though the sides I know are designed to look somewhat blend in and everything, but I know the Green Hex Center, the school put in tilted, probably for aesthetics, so nobody's catching the full force of one side of the building. That's kind of what I'm looking at here, is if they worked it to turn it, go parallel to Green Heck, it would help a bundle. And you know, the people on the west side, that's all side yards. They're not looking out the front door at it. The ones on the east side, and granted, there's only 4 of us, but we're having a look at the whole building.
I don't think it's.
So the picture on 77 would be what would be facing the parking lot.
76 as well.
Is that what's gonna be facing Alderson?
Yeah, that'll be the entry. Well, both of them will.
So would the rest of it be below grade?
No, it's going above.
75 feet above grade.
That peak on that right-hand side is 72.5.
Which is the 27 feet above the existing height of Green Heck. So you're just under doubling the
I'm
height
just
of that building.
wondering though if, I mean, you're quite far away, so you're
Well,
kind of
again, that's why I said, Keith's gonna be up on the top of the road, right?
Right.
That building is set down. We're talking about, right now, we're talking about,
You've got that whole parking lot area and
what do we got, 3 feet of difference from what it ultimately code would be?
If you go from the street elevation.
Yeah.
It's down 24.5 from street elevation, so.
And we're asking for 27 feet, right?
If that's the number.
27.5?
27.75 minus.
So we're about
24.
3 feet higher, 3.5 feet higher than what, right now, currently, if he was flush with the street, we're asking for 3.5 feet higher for the building to be approved.
You're 50 feet higher than the street.
no.
What was the elevation of the street?
Drops about 25 feet,
25 feet to ground level?
You're gonna look over.
And you have a 75-foot building?
Oh, it's only
72.
72, well, just roughly, that's 50 feet above road level.
No, 50 feet above. Yeah.
50 feet above Alderson Street.
40 something.
Okay, 45 feet above Alderson.
Ultimately, no matter which way you look at it, they could be coming in here if it was flush with Alderson and not even have to say anything at 45 feet. So they're actually asking for 3.5 more feet higher than what they're allowed to do if it was flat off of Alderson. So that's the way well, when we look at this and and I understand, Keith, where you're living, I completely get it. I understand it, but it is down, 24.5 feet down. So that if we minus that off to 72.5, you're at I'm gonna use my phone.
You said you got some telephone call?
It'd be 47.5 feet.
There was just
48 feet.
No complaint or.
And.
They just
co-
asked questions.
what- So at 47.5, so what do we got, 45 is height, 5, 6, 7, 3 feet? Because it was 40, I got 48, but whatever.
I mean, I tend to agree with exactly what you're saying. Yeah, if you built it at street level.
So ultimately, I guess, when we talk about this we look at how many garages do we approve that are 3 to 5, sometimes 10 feet higher than what the code states. So I completely understand what Keith is saying. Heck, now I look out my front window, my front bay window, and I stare at this big mammoth building. Granted, he's got to see the whole 77 feet because, he's got the road out in front of him and then the parking lot goes down. So he is getting the visual, because your house, Keith, you have a bi-level, so you're up a little higher, right? You're up several feet, so you can see the whole thing. You can see the parking lot. So I understand where you're coming from. I really do.
And like I say, I'm not necessarily trying to shut the whole project down. But like I'm saying, if they can twist that building to parallel green hex, so we're not catching the full
effect of it.
Effect of 120 yards of that
They don't have enough.
warehouse looking building. There's room.
I can answer that.
They would lose parking.
So we went through.
Sir, can
could you step up to the microphone and Jason, name and address for the record? Buildings and grounds with DC Everest. We went through, really.
What's your address, please?
9306 Lambert Street, Rothschild.
I'm just being technical now.
Yeah. You just want to know where I live. We looked at a lot of different scenarios and we looked at positioning in a lot of different ways, but then we'd wipe out the practice field, the JV and the varsity baseball fields. There were some egress issues with the existing doors in the back of Green Heck. So there were a lot of hurdles that they had to do in order to try to twist the building. And then where do you come up with another practice field?
Well, not only that, you got those fields in the back, which I understand what you're saying, but now you twist that building, now you're gonna build that much more parking lot. You're gonna add a couple $1 million to put stormwater and build that parking lot back in there.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say that this was probably one of 25 different renderings. The other ones just didn't lend themselves onto the lot.
Yep. You're being able to capture some of the height of that front. And then you're utilizing it for we looked at the plans pretty intensely and it would be difficult to move that thing without a bunch of extra expenses over to the north towards, like if you would go almost parallel, Keith, with the highway. Is that what you're saying, right?
No, like with the Green Heck building, taking out turning it 45 degrees.
Yeah, well, yeah, instead of being parallel, but it's kind of running the same way as the highway, but it's more of a highway's running.
More running.
Yeah, on an angle.
Lengthwise this way, you take out the two softball diamonds is what you do.
Yeah, I follow you.
Not that way. You
No.
have to twist it 90 degrees.
Oh, what's wrong with that?
And you're really eliminating a lot of the.
So you're saying like that?
Well.
Some of it too, logistically, when you're looking at, just say somebody from the community coming in to use the center itself, the main entrance is, everybody knows where the main entrance is. This design lends you to come in at that grade now and go left to the existing. You're gonna actually be able to walk straight into the ice from grade level.
There's no steps going, them steps that are entering now.
Yeah, there's an elevator that takes you up now. There's also steps to get to the upper level, but you can walk right through into the lower
Does anybody
level
want to
from the
see?
lower level.
Yeah.
What I'm.
So.
Because you'd still be utilizing the Everest front edge here.
Yeah.
For entry, because you're already connecting this right in here.
Yeah, like I said, though, we looked at that, but then we wipe out practice field
Well,
and
you'd be wiping out two softball diamonds.
the practice field.
Are you gonna have enough?
You still have practice field here.
We still have three tennis courts, so it's.
We're already taking
You're
out.
wiping out tennis courts.
Tennis
and you
courts.
have
Yeah.
practice field left, turning it like that too.
A third of that practice field.
You also have to look at setbacks off of that side lot line.
He's still got 90 degrees. Or 45, I should say, 45 degree it.
So I guess a point of order, we're not redesigning the site. The question
Correct.
here, because they actually have to go through site plan after this. And this is the reason why they came first to talk to you guys about the height, is you are acting on the height so that they can continue on with their plans.
I guess, I'll just throw out from my perspective, and that's why I asked the question of how many people commented and what were their comments. I respect completely your outlook as to not wanting to see potentially that building all the time, but in my own head, I kept going through, if it's one person that is gonna have a slightly not happy view versus the benefit to the whole community of all the people that would use this facility, I start to weigh very much on the side of the whole community.
But you only have so many residences that abut this.
Oh,
And in your city, that's how big, that's not a valid point to be putting out.
Well,
What's the population of Weston?
16,000-ish.
16,000, so you take the, 32 homes that are, if there's that many that abut it, it's probably 16 homes. That's a very small percentage that have any say then.
All those parcels that were contacted, right?
Everybody.
We sent out, I believe, 75 notices.
Okay, so I'm just gonna ask a question here, and this is where I'll, if they came back with a plan at 45 foot high, would you have a problem with it?
45 total?
Yeah.
For the building, not the 70 some?
Yeah.
The 45 would be more doable, but again, it's not possible because they need that height. I understand that.
But I mean, ultimately, if they did come back with 45, would you still have a problem with it, Keith?
Probably not at 45 because it's continuing on what is there, and it doesn't just put such a big.
Mike, do you have an elevation, or do you know what the elevation of Green Neck is? The Green Neck Center?
I was looking through here. I don't know if I have that.
I found it at 28 feet from the gym. Oh, I'm sorry, that was for the gym addition off the back.
Yeah, the
So-
green heck that drops down, that whole wall is the 45, I think is what they have that. I think they maxed it out probably when they built it.
What height, can I ask, what height would they?
Elevation.
Now, I think you mentioned it. At what height, if they came in, wouldn't they have to ask for our permission?
45 feet.
45 feet, that's why I asked them.
Okay.
So right now they're going, and in some ways, like, no different than when we look at some of those garage conditional uses and what it's gonna deter. I mean, we've approved some garages that have been 10, 15 feet, 10 feet for sure, higher. And, I take in consideration the drop that it's dropping. I do understand Keith's position on it. How are your neighbors feeling about it?
No, they aren't too happy. I know they weren't happy when Green Heck went in, the hockey rink.
Mm-hmm.
And, the one guy, he's dead now, but his wife's still alive. I know he was having a problem with that years ago.
And it's, I'm assuming that this will bring a lot of traffic, which is, and
That is not really a concern to me.
Sure.
I really don't have a problem with the traffic. I mean, guy has a problem with the speed sometimes that people are going, but that's irrelevant. But I mean, the traffic really isn't on.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, sir? Or does anybody else have any questions?
I do have a question. Is that architect there?
But it would be if it was 45.
What's the magic about 75 feet high? Why are you going that high?
I can answer that for him. The architect's not here tonight, but 75 feet is in order for us to be able to run baseball, softball on the inside, they have to have that clear span on the inside. So with the trusses, because imagine the width is, what, close to 400 feet? They got a pretty big girder on the inside. In order to get that magic height for actually playing, that's what they need.
400 feet.
It's 400 by 300, I think, right, total, is that?
Sounds right.
Cause it drops way down.
So it's 300 feet wide, 400 long.
Okay.
I don't remember what the webbing was on the trusses, but I want to say that on one of the drawings, they might be in that packet, I'm not sure, but.
That's a clear Spanish drawing, probably.
Yeah, so clear span, 300 feet.
So what is your height that you need on the inside to make that doable? Is it the 45 feet?
Yeah, it's not.
Because you don't have 72 feet the whole way.
No,
So you're
it's-
not getting your total usage of
It's,
your.
but it's how the field is positioned. So the field is positioned where it's, you know what I mean? You're batting up into the
Part
house.
of it is still,
The outside.
left field's gonna be getting the full height, the right field may not.
Well, no, because
Right
that's
field,
where people sit and you have storage. So you're not, you know what I mean? You're not right on the outside edge. So you start in.
But even so, you're one part of the field.
Point of order,
That's
does anybody else have anything else for Keith here? Right now, any questions for Keith? No, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I'm just wondering if like, okay, you approve it to, you know, to get this thing like twisted, is that something you go to planning commission meetings then, or?
Well, maybe staff can elaborate on that a little bit. From my understanding, this is just to approve the height, like Jen said, this isn't,
Yeah.
this isn't like the time for us to talk about a redesign of the plan as a whole. That would
Yeah,
have to
site
come
plan, I mean, essentially, if it meets setbacks, there's little that we
Can't do
can
much.
say.
But does the
from
planning
anyone.
commission deal with that then, or?
No.
No, okay, I just one.
They, if everything meets their requirements, what's required, then they do the approval. So ultimately, you know, and I'm just gonna tell you what my brain tells me Keith is gonna be, is if it drops off, and again, I'm sorry, but that's just how I have to look at it, is being it drops off 25 feet, I'm really asking for 3 more feet to the top of that roof from the road level. So,
But as with the neighbors, it's like, okay, you put yourself in their shoes too. Would you want to be looking at this? You know, that's not when they bought their house. I mean, there's some people that have been there a long time. I mean, original owner, and then there's like us, we've been there 3 years. We didn't buy the house expecting that this would happen. I mean, we expected the normal traffic of school and that, and this really isn't school. This isn't school district, this is community going on here. So to me, community should be in a more of an industrial park setting with a building that size.
Anybody have anything else?
So they're actually 72.9 feet is the peak of that roof. The side elevation is 40 feet. Right?
correct.
So the 75 you see is not the whole thing.
And it's spread out over 150 feet.
No, the peak of it's 72 feet. But when you get to the side, it's 40 feet.
But I'm
It's
still
dropping,
getting,
the slope of the roof is, I'm not sure what the slope is, but
I think it's 412.
112?
412.
Yeah.
but still, you're getting the height of the building, no matter whether it's a sloped roof
Yes,
or
at
a
one
square
point,
side.
peak of the roof is 72 feet.
But I don't look at this part of it. I look at the whole span of it. I look at this part of the roof, not this part.
But I think as we were talking here, that if we didn't approve it, they could, if it would work, they could come in and ask for 3 feet less. I mean, they wouldn't even have to come in and ask.
Well, yeah,
Right.
they have to no matter what over 45 feet.
Okay.
I'm just using the scenario of the elevation drop. That's the only reason why I did that. And taking consideration for Keith, he has to go up to his living room where he's looking out at this thing every day.
Yeah.
That he is getting the full visual of it because he's able to see over the road and he can see the parking lot and he can see this big building. I get that and I understand that. But
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment? Third time, anyone online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment? Michael, anybody with their hands up?
No.
All right, hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. We have a recommendation from staff.
Staff recommends approval.
Okay. Discussion and action by plan commission.
These phone calls are taken or fielded. Emily, you said you didn't take them personally. What's the procedure or protocol for that?
So Valerie took them because it's usually someone just asking what it is, and a lot of them were, there was a couple of people that didn't have access to a computer, so they couldn't go out to the website and were just curious. Because the way we have to write these hearing notices, there's not a whole lot. We don't send like picture maps, we refer them to the website, so. I'm not even sure, did someone come in for plans today? Okay.
No one came in person.
So, basically what she does is she references them. A lot of times people don't understand that the meeting's public, so she, they just, can we come? And she says, yes, that's why you got the notice. And then, she also told them about the Zoom option if they couldn't come in. So in there, it gives them the opportunity to give you guys written notice if they can't make it too. So they could have sent us an email or something.
But if Susie Jones calls and says, hey, what is this? And you explain the project to her and she says, well, I don't want it. We don't track or log that in any way, correct?
We tell them, then they need to put that into writing. Yeah, we're not the messengers. We can
write a letter or come to the meeting.
Yep, and that's why it specifically says it in there, because it's essentially just us saying hearsay to you. So if somebody does have a problem, they need to take that initiative to put it in writing, or come to the meetings. That's why we have them.
I mean, I think we've all been in meetings when somebody doesn't want anything. Usually the whole thing is full of somebody and then some of them come up and say they're against it or whatever it may be, so. That's why I asked Keith how your neighbors felt about it. And if they felt strongly about it, why they didn't come to the meeting.
Can I just comment? Oh, because
I think so.
I think what they went through with the green hack thing, where they felt like, what are we gonna do? They're, like I say, it's a small group with a big community. So, if your community was 200 people, well, it's a pretty big group then that, can have some leverage.
Yep.
So.
And one more, I guess all of us, but how many people from this, are classes or school gonna be able to utilize the? So it's not just for outside.
Correct. Yeah, it's both. So the function would be, during the day when we lock down school, we usually lock down green hack. So we lock it down for safety for that same reason, and then students use it. End of the day, it opens up to the community.
Okay. Does that make you feel any better, Keith? I mean, not that it.
Well, none of that really, because green hack operates, it's operating the same way, so. It's just having a look at that big roof.
Yes.
Sitting there.
Did you use the facility?
Would I? Not that one. I still go to hockey games and watch that, but as far as the other facility, no.
Do you still have open memberships for that, don't you?
Yeah, correct.
Would you have any interest if you got one for free?
I don't think I need much in the fitness.
It's gonna be a golf simulator if you're a golfer.
I was just gonna.
I'm not looking.
If it was, one of my thoughts was just maybe that they'd give them a free membership or lifetime free membership or.
We've already got a plan. Our goal was to based on approval go around to the neighbors, and we have a care package we're putting together that has different things in it. And I know it doesn't ease all those pains of having to look at the building, right? We understand that. But I do think that the offset of what it does for the community is pretty beneficial. And you look at the tax base it brings in and what it's gonna do think about even if you're an employer and you're trying to draw people in this area to work for you, what a great asset for your school to have.
I 100% hear what you're saying and agree with you. I was just trying to find a way that maybe you can appease some of the people that are being negatively impacted.
Well, I mean, it's not like you guys don't hold a grudge, it's either goes through or it doesn't, you know, so.
So, I mean, ultimately, I guess, what if Greenheck would, or the school district would put some trees in front of their Keith? So you don't have to.
Well, I don't know if that's a good thing, no.
That's what I was gonna say.
But I'm just saying for policing the parking lot and that, I don't think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, if they start losing vision down
Yep.
into the lot after hours,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
We could do a berm.
I almost think it's probably worse, because again,
No,
I can see down in
You
there.
understand, I mean, we were all aliens when we were kids. We all went through our.
You were.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and this is part of, when you look at the site plan too, I mean, we're trying to fix some of the traffic patterns too. We all know that, I mean, we have teenage kids in our lot, right? So there's some issues with that, but we're bringing in parents separately, separating parents from kids and making a lot of safety changes on the site that are gonna be huge for the impact of this school in that center.
Would there be any landscape on your own lot?
So one of the proposals, if you look at that green space where old admin was, we're talking about making that into like a little community park. So we're gonna leave that as green space, and then that would be used for anybody who wants to have a picnic there, or potentially like for an after school can take kids over there and get to a shaded area.
Now, the current driveway that's there right by administration, right there, the one down below that, is that a new driveway going in there?
So what we're trying to do here is just if you're dropping a kid off and you're a parent, you don't have to go in the lot with the kids. You come right down, drop them off, and you leave, but then the kids can't also come in front of the building past where parents are dropping off. So we're completely separating them from parents.
That's where there's a big problem with traffic in the morning, big time. It'd be nice to get a 4-lane road up there, so you have turn lanes, because I can't get out of my driveway, because the traffic gets backed up going to the south, trying to turn in to the parking lot, and, you know, they gotta cut across traffic to get in there.
So we'll be adding a couple entrances down closer where the bus barn is. And the intent is to put our less experienced drivers furthest away, so that they're not driving where it's the most congested. So they'll actually give up numbers for those kids that are new sophomores getting their license. They'll have a numbered spot further away than the seniors get to park closer to the building.
Yeah, it just, by having more lanes going out, I don't know if that's going to alleviate it.
All right, just.
I mean, they're getting away from the husher thing, so, but.
Right now, we're not in public comment period anymore, so at this point, it's just the plan commission that can. So Jim, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I don't see a problem with the height. Would love to see the site in its entirety to see how it works together, but the site approval authority is staff on this project, correct?
It'll start out that way, yes, potentially.
Gary, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you.
Joe?
Good.
Roy?
No.
Barb?
No, I mean, other than, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know, what the solution would be, other than canceling the project. And I don't think we want to do that.
Shane?
I think you should have architect here next time come to this meeting, can explain the facility a little bit better to us.
We can set that up and go and come back.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
What's your pleasure?
Shane, did you have other questions for the architect? You're making contingent on a meeting with the architect?
Well, no, he can explain the structure, how he is. And the 75 feet is open span, 300 feet span is pretty long span.
Right.
I mean, so we can explain that, how and what then.
Do you want, I mean, when they came to meet with staff a few months ago, they had a flyover, I mean, I can get that. Fly through of the entire building.
I guess. I
They
mean,
basically have
That's a,
a mock-up of the building.
they'll do a virtual fly through, go through the building and inside, outside, they'll do everything.
So you can
It's like a movie.
Spaces, I mean, they asked if they want, if, you know, the school district is more than interested in coming and meeting with the board and showing, what it's gonna look like for the community, and then we can schedule something like that,
It was presented to the tourism commission.
Great.
Again, I think,
Some of you-
I think the REI is just here to, first of all, see if the height is gonna be okay.
Yeah, I mean, that was the big thing, they've gotta move forward now, they needed to know the height was
I
going to make
think
it.
some of the questions that gentlemen have, the architect can answer it better than we sitting here and respond to him. We can explain to him that facility, how it look and why it is the way it is. And maybe he can satisfy him to agree, to make him agree with the process and the elevation increase.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I think just someone to better explain it so we can understand this. And maybe even I guess I couldn't see one in here, but a photo that shows where this is in relation to Green Hack would be super helpful.
It is,
Is the whole front of Green Hack being redesigned?
Yeah,
Okay.
so those stairs are gone.
This is the height of Green Hat currently,
Okay.
and it blends in, or one of these.
So pretty much.
Okay, I see what you're
building.
saying now.
Yeah.
And that'll be the roof.
Yeah, see that roof,
Okay.
remember the roof
Yep.
panels that Keith is saying, I gotta stare at that.
So where it said Green Hack, or where it says Green Hack there, that was where you would walk up into the building.
Okay.
Mark Maloney here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was at the tourism meeting. I'm an alternate with the planning commission, but I was at the tourism meeting, and the presentation that she gave was absolutely overwhelming. It was unbelievable. I was so impressed and so excited for this community. The hoteliers were completely behind this, and the tourism, I don't know if this was said tonight, but the tourism, we committed $200,000, for the next the next 3 years to help from the hoteliers. And it was viewed as an incredible opportunity for our area. And you can't experience this kind of a facility. I mean, you have to drive to the cities or Chicago to be able to participate in something like this. But the views, and I believe it was animated about how high that clear span was inside that building to be able to do the sports, the baseball, all the different things. So I was incredibly impressed. I know I'm not voting on this tonight, but I would definitely agree with the height and leave it as is. I just wanted to make sure you all heard my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I mean, that presentation is pretty,
Yeah, he can come here and impress us too.
it won't change the height thing.
I'll start, nobody wants to make the decision, but I'll start by saying I'll make a motion to approve. Just off of my opinion that we're only going 3 feet higher than, we've approved so many of these projects already, whether it's residentially. But what this impact is gonna do for our community is by far overweighs what the extra footage that I feel is, that we're grumbling about here, or that we're looking at. So I'll make a motion to approve the proposed height of the facility. And I guess I can't make it, we gotta go through this first, don't we?
Yeah.
So I'll pull back my motion.
All right, item number 1 is the proposed conditional use consistent with the comprehensive plan, this chapter and all other plans, programs and ordinances adopted by the village.
Yes.
Yes. Number 2, the proposed conditional use in its proposed location and as depicted on the required site plan will not result in a substantial or undue adverse impact on nearby property. Character of the neighborhood, environmental factors, traffic factors, parking, public improvements, public property or rights of way, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, or general welfare, either as they now exist or as they may in the future be developed as a result of the implementation of the provisions of this chapter, the comprehensive plan or all other plans, programs, and ordinances adopted by the village.
I'll say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Does the proposed conditional use maintain the desired consistency of land uses, land use intensities, and land use impacts as related to the environs of the subject property?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Is the proposed conditional use located in an area that will be adequately served by and will not impose an undue burden on any of the improvements, facilities, utilities, or services provided by public agencies serving the subject property?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Do the potential public benefits of the proposed conditional use outweigh potential adverse impacts of the proposed conditional use after taking into consideration the applicant's proposal and any requirements recommended by the applicant to ameliorate such impacts?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Do we need to have a generalized, does everybody need to be yes, or is it majority? How is that?
You're going to vote on.
Okay. So that being said, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the height of 72.5 feet, as they brought for the conditional use.
A motion by Gern,
Second?
second by Pincinel. On the question? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So carried. Thank you for coming. Thanks for being here.
Are you
Everybody back there.
bringing somebody in at the next meeting then too, or?
That would be, I guess, if the next time you're in here, if you wanted to bring in the architect to answer questions or.
I have to check with them for their availability, to make sure they can make it, but yeah, we can do that. I mean, otherwise, honestly, we have meetings with them almost every week, so if you wanted to even, you know.
I was gonna ask Keith, if you're available, they have a meeting that they get together.
Yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea if you would get involved in that. And
But if the board members want a presentation, I think, I just have to check with them on their availability to come up, but I'm sure they can work something.
This is on the board on Monday night, correct? No.
So the only thing, Keith, I just wanna make you aware that if they meet all requirements from here, it may not come back here.
Yeah, so I mean,
I
it
think-
doesn't pay for them to come here, just to talk to you guys.
Yeah.
Who's that? Oh,
These guys, so I mean, if it's just to talk to me, I should be going and I'm gonna one of their meetings.
I would suggest getting together, just share contact information and see if you guys can't get together. And then if the plan approval authority, which is Jen and Emily or the staff, find anything that they're not compliant with, then they have to come back to us for approval, but they may meet everything, we don't know. So,
We don't have a submittal yet, all we have is.
Yeah, I guess I don't think we need to see, my personal, that we need to talk to the engineer. I mean, I don't know what we approved the conditional use. But what I would wonder is, could you give that presentation that was given to the, the tourism commission? I seen it and I was very impressed. Could you let even, I don't know if the planning committee was interested, commission is interested in seeing it, or the town board? I think the village board, I just think it's, and educate, I mean,
So
like I
do
said,
you
I
have
was
that
very impressed
presentation?
with it.
Yeah, we have it, yeah.
So maybe could you submit that to Jen and then Jen could submit it to everybody on planning commission?
Yeah, I mean, she could have it up
Fantastic,
here,
thank you.
you know.
If you want a full presentation or whatever else, we can take care of that as well. So, and that's also.
I mean, I don't know if the rest of the commission is interested, but I think it's a very good presentation.
Well, and maybe Keith, if you have some neighbors, these guys are great to work with. I think they'll accommodate as much as possible and understand what you're going through. Maybe It'll help. Maybe it'll help, maybe it won't, I'm not sure. But at least they're, you know, open for, open lines of communication with you. So.
All right, there's nothing else. New business, item number 11, discussion on removing commercial completion surcharge fee for all commercial new and additions, and instead requiring development agreements on all projects.
So I am looking at some ways to streamline.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Some processes. So I talked to Keith potentially about removing this completion surcharge fee. In the past, we did not require the development agreements, and we are now doing that on all projects. We're not doing them on the smaller additions, but if we would remove that fee, we would require there to be some kind of a small development agreement. I think the development agreements have more teeth because people are agreeing to build what is getting approved by the planning commission or at the staff level because they are signing this. Really, to be honest with you, $5,000 does not go very far on a project. Typically, it's maybe landscaping or something that does not get completed or a second lift on a parking lot. So it also requires us to follow back up, and it also includes bringing in the finance department who has to issue these checks back, things like that. So this was just one thought to kind of streamline the process a little bit. People grumble about the 5,000 and 2,500.
Gary?
So your thoughts?
What is your year-to-year rough fee amount that you generate? In other words, you're not replacing this, right?
Well, we don't keep it, so it's paid back.
It used to be funded at 5,000 anyway.
We're holding it.
I got you.
Yeah.
Unless they don't finish, then we would keep that.
So it's a
But a
zero.
lot of times, the development is like, well, for $5,000, I'm just gonna walk away from it because it's gonna cost me more than that to put the second lift on or whatever.
Sure.
So you don't charge them for the time you put on these projects?
Theoretically, it would be included in the site plan review, but if a project takes, you know, it's been averaged out, but if a project takes longer, we're not recouping full staff review time or work time.
It's not charity, is it?
Developers like to know a flat rate that they are, you know, if we said, okay, we're charging $50 for every hour that we're working, we'd probably be hounded to go faster, you know.
There's multiple ways to do permits. We've kind of talked about that before. Ours is kind of a difference between the site plan and then also the building permit fees, but you're never going to recoup. I mean, some we may make some money on, others we spend exorbitant amount of time, and you would never be able to charge for that. So permit fees are actually user fees, but we've looked at this and what we charge is kind of the middle of the road. You can see all kinds of different ones, but this is just basically a fee that we hold. We don't keep it. It gets returned. So it's just something that we've always had. There's a $1,000 residential one that gets done. I'm not saying to do anything with that because that works well for them to complete their final inspection on things and give it back with the builders. But from a standpoint, I think the development agreements work a lot better, and we're already putting the time in on those for the bigger projects, and we can just have a standard smaller one that the smaller building additions would also partake in, so.
What would, okay, say you
Can I
would,
hold just for a second? Gary's been waiting.
Okay.
Go ahead, Gary.
Jen, on that, who's in charge of developing the development agreement then?
So right now, Emily and I are drafting them. It's based off of basically, we've got something from Matt, who's our lawyer, and then that's kind of how they're being done right now.
So how much costs are we gonna incur by having, because when
That doesn't do them. I mean,
I'm thinking of the one that I did for my shop.
well, that's different. Yours is
'Cause there's
different
TIF.
because it's TIF.
I understand
Yours is
that.
more elaborate.
But that's why I'm going with it, is because there was an attorney out of Minnesota or something that was involved.
Yeah, that was different.
So
You're always gonna have that. We've always done that, and what we've done is we've expanded it into, we have a small, they're not as elaborate as that.
So the development agreement is handled by staff, so there's not gonna be a third-party attorney.
No, and what we do is we draft them, and typically then, like in the case of Aldi's, Caribou, those are the ones that we've done so far.
Do you have Matt review them then or something?
We've just kind of, I mean, he's looked at a couple just for language, just to get it, but they're pretty much in a form right now that it's just a boilerplate.
Okay,
We have what we need in them.
so staff doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's my only question.
We only go if
How much-
there's something weird that comes up.
How much
Leave it
cost?
to him but otherwise it's,
Okay.
and I don't even know if these need to actually be recorded. We have been recording them. That's a $30 fee. But they basically are null and void at that completion, so.
Okay, what if they don't, my question was, what if they don't complete?
Well, you have a signed agreement, so it's gonna, regardless, if they don't, or even with that 5,000, we have to go to court on it, and they wouldn't stand a chance because you have an approval process. They've gone through site plan approval, and they've said that they were going to.
Court costs too.
They always, whenever we go to court, it's always that they have to reimburse court fees.
Because that was my biggest question. I thought, okay,
Whenever we go to court on anything, we always get, if the judge does anything in our favor, rules in our favor, we get that back.
And Jen, is there a stipulation in your developer's agreement that says if you do not follow this procedure, blah, 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 we can take you to court or there's fees involved and you pay for attorney fees if you're not following suit? So that's all in there?
Yes.
Okay.
I really don't see if excuse me. If we charge some money for reviewing this plan and the staff is spending.
Well, this is on top of so we charge site plan review. This is on top, so this gets paid at the time of the building permit.
Yep.
The $5,000, it's basically like a bond, we're holding money for them.
Make sure you're gonna finish your job.
Right, but it doesn't meet we can't do anything with $5,000 nowadays, get a couple trees.
So I'm in complete agreement.
Right, so it's really not doing anything, it's causing more work for different departments and people don't like it because it's holding up some of their money too, so.
Correct me if I'm wrong, this is simply an enforcement tool, moving from one system to another.
Yeah.
And this has much more teeth, you've got a contractual agreement.
They always
Much more
have
easily
this
enforced.
completion surcharge in our code, other communities use the development agreement. And some use both.
And I guess, I could probably make this public. I called Jen or Emily this week. Like Jen, I sent you a message and they responded back.
Go for the condos?
Yeah, and part of it was on the rock band thing down at the end of our subdivision there. That property never finished their project.
Right, and so and some of that was the reason Roman got hired. So some of those older ones back, especially in the early days, back when we were really going through and having lots of building development. Myself and, I don't know, it was probably Scott, or the previous building inspector. So he was out doing homes, there was not that completion
No, I get
portion that ever got done.
So did you find, Emily or Jen, did they have a development agreement?
There wasn't one that I
Because
know of.
both parcels, what they've invested in that?
So some of that was because they had plans for an additional area, and so that's one of those cases where it was, but we're gonna add on here, so we don't wanna do the second
And then it
one.
never happened.
So that's why in
There's
there,
literally water standing in their parking.
so they
lot. Now there's
basically
grass growing in
need to redo their whole parking
And it's
lot.
all busted up. And that was I was just saying, can we hold them accountable but this young man just bought it. And he doesn't realize all the crap that they didn't finish, so it's really not his fault.
It's part of a condo association,
Yes.
so I think the original owner's sister owns it.
Eric.
And I know I have spoken to her husband and the original owner before.
They don't want to spend any money
Right.
in that place at all.
And I need to follow up and talk to Matt to see how that works with an existing property, just because it's not to code and it needs, if the roads are that bad in there, that becomes basically a safety.
Well, they've been running probably, I would say, 8 to 10 years on 1.5 inches of asphalt.
Right.
Which is shot. I mean, you can't even get the water out to the road where that's where the storm sewer is supposed to go because it's backed up in the parking lot an inch and a half from not having the remaining quote on it. So it sits there, then it freezes, now there's grass growing in it, tops, so, I mean, it's a mess. So that's why I brought this to, when I made the call was, can we hold this back? But it's not really the young man's that was on the phone, it's not his fault.
Right.
That's all I was asking Jen and Emily when I saw that on the plan, saying, hey, maybe this is our opportunity to try to correct this, but really it wasn't. So, and then it just brings up with the developers agreement, if they did have a developers agreement, now they can go back and say, hey, you never followed through this, we're gonna take you to court. Otherwise, they could say, pound sand with your $5,000, we don't really care because it's gonna cost us $50,000 to put the pavement on. Now they're not gonna pave on top of what's there because it's junk. So they're gonna have to take both layers off, which way more.
I completely agree. Jim?
So I just said a couple of things. Was there an actual time study done, or this is just staff?
I'm just starting the conversation, so it.
Right, but in here it says, that it takes more time. Was there an actual time study completed by staff or an outside third party?
I think it's just, knowing that we're eliminating some other departments' work in this whole thing, cutting checks and receiving them and whatever, so that's part
It
of it.
was just a general statement that it takes a lot of extra time that probably isn't necessary.
Where I was going with this is, there's gonna be time involved, staff time, no matter how we do it, whether we do a development agreement or we do a completion surcharge. And you're confident that the completion surcharge takes less time than, I get it, you don't have to involve finance to cut a check or.
The development agreement would take less time. We don't have to get them involved at all. I feel it has more teeth because someone's actually signing it.
I agree.
So that they can't go into court and say, oh, I didn't know that.
Sure. How many development agreements does the village currently have?
We just started doing that within the last year, so.
But you don't have development agreements from 1990 when a subdivision was built or anything like that?
There's different, you're talking about different development agreements. This is
I
just
understand,
for-
yep, no, I'm not. I'm talking about development agreements, period. And who polices them? So is the same protocol in place for the development agreement for a subdivision that was built and the street wasn't up to code versus
So they have
all these?
something they have always done development agreements for subdivisions and for road projects.
Yep.
In the past, we've only done development agreements that I know of when a TIF funding has been involved.
Okay.
For your example of the subdivision, if they don't pave the road, we as the village don't take it over, we don't plow it, we don't maintain it, and, that's the incentive for the developer to get it done is. They want to be able to.
Public Works looks at the.
Well, not only that, you require a bond for it.
Correct, yeah.
And you go after the bond company.
Correct, yeah, there's,
So is there a bond included in your?
Because there's no guarantee if somebody's
for
assets.
This is for a commercial project, right?
A letter of credit or some security, there's options on security for subdivision development.
But no, I'm okay, so now let's shift gears into, we're talking just commercial projects now, not subdivisions. So if we want development agreements for all of these, I'm just looking at how does this get policed?
It's going to be taken, no matter what, our only option is to take people to court.
No, I understand that, but who looks at it? Do you have a chart? Do you have a spreadsheet? Do you have?
So instead of,
Actually, Roman and staff would look at it and verify
and
that.
I am the keeper of the development agreement.
so then, obviously then, Scott, you have your final approval on this.
Building gets completed, we give occupancy, the site is done, we notify that everything is done.
And so then you're gonna turn that over to
Contract.
Jen. Jen's gonna then, okay, I'm done with this developer agreement, we can
Yeah.
sign off and.
That says it's done at the time of completion.
You're just asking to make sure it doesn't slip through the cracks.
Well, right, I feel like right now it's not getting policed at all. Or if it is, it's
No, it
done
is.
poorly.
And his project that he's talking about was done in like 2006,
Sure,
2007.
I know of another project on Schofield Avenue that was done last year, but that one didn't happen. And the completion surcharge didn't get returned until last week. But I'm saying if we're not policing the completion surcharge, what's to say that we're gonna police the development agreement? What process is in place?
There's still a completion. So basically, a project, when they take out a building permit, they have 2 years to do that.
Yep.
So if we don't get a call back, in the past, prior to COVID, we had been, so in 2019, we were following up on projects from 2017 and 2018 that had not, or even 2016, that had never said anything to us that they were done. So basically, our process prior to that was a letter went out. Jared was working with Roman on those because Roman was the inspector doing the completion. Part of his position is also as property inspector. So his responsibility was to go back out to those after they were done. So typically it was Jared and Roman, or Emily and Roman now, go out to the site. It all depends on when they call us and at what time of the year. We tend to follow up with these in the late fall and winter. We basically do this in the winter time so that in the spring, we can go out and then close this stuff out before we get busy.
Can I ask a question on that? I think pertaining maybe to where Jim is going is, in Evolve, can you fill out a report, Scott, so you're done with your?
That's how we find that.
Okay, so that's, I think that's what he's asking. Okay, so at the end of the year, you can just say, hey, report, what developer agreements are still open that aren't closed out? You can then print that report or whatever.
It's basically what projects are still open that haven't.
Would it be something as simple, could we ask that a copy of that report be put in the plan commission's meeting packet?
And
What, 4 times a year, once a quarter?
Sure.
So that someone can, if you want to review it, or you want to review it, or somebody wants to review it.
yeah, we hadn't been really up on that because of COVID, because of people.
That's
kind of
years
took
ago.
Well, I know, but there's still people.
No, there's
We're still
aftermath.
kind of
There's
back up
aftermath.
from COVID.
There really is. I'll be
We
honest.
never stopped.
I don't have mine, Scott. You haven't been back out to do my final on mine. The
I
only
mean,
thing.
these guys never stopped through COVID. We
No, but
not
the
even in the
projects got
winter.
delayed.
I'm just gonna say, things got delayed. You couldn't get
Right,
materials for stuff.
yeah.
That's
So we
right.
gave
So-
grace to people.
Yeah, yeah,
So
understood.
It'll be a little bit for us to catch back up.
But Evolve, you can print the report on Evolve for that at year end.
We can print projects that are still open, I believe, yes. And if not, they can figure out a way to do it.
I think Mr. Cronin had an excellent point.
Is it a long?
Let's put some kind of policy in place to, not just a development agreement, but something that states, we're gonna put the development agreement in place. And this is how we're going to police it or check it or do something. So stuff doesn't just lay out there for a year or 2 years or 5 years. But maybe we have COVID 2.0 and that would delay something else, but at least you can follow up with, Susie Jones that built this building that, oh, well, hey, Susie, you still don't have electricity in the building. 3 years later?
Well, then they're not occupying the building.
So does the development agreement prevent an occupancy certificate?
Well, I don't think Scott will issue an occupancy permit until it's completed.
There is, I mean, the
Yeah.
This
building's
is the
gotta be completed, the
completion.
site might not be
This is the
completed,
site
you can start
completion,
occupancy.
and that's the difference between the two. They will get an occupancy so that they can open up and we don't hold them. They don't get the completion, and their development agreement goes until we clear the site. Because a lot of times, they're not putting second lifts on until the next year. They're not putting
Second lift, I couldn't get the landscaper to show up the fencing.
Well, depending on the time of year, they're not gonna
And
install.
they gotta call us when they do and let us know that they're completed.
Otherwise, we have to go
We don't,
and try
you
to
know,
figure it
we
out.
don't-
Can we follow up in a certain amount of time? If 6
that
months
was
goes
what our
by and you haven't heard
process
from them?
was. We have to
Why
get
we
back
do the
on.
reports every, no,
Sure.
you know.
I'm just asking, I'm not.
Yeah, some of it is we have to get back
Building
into.
permits, we do that on building permit payments, because sometimes we don't even know, we build them and they don't pay.
Right.
So then somebody has to follow up on a monthly basis, find out who's paid their permits. I mean, there's a lot of follow-up on
So
everything.
ultimately, can I ask the question, if your development agreement, or your, not development, but your refund, what was the holdup on that? Can somebody in staff tell me why, or did it just?
I believe that he was, the lighting was not out yet.
Lighting was installed,
Stuff.
July of 2021.
And did you send an email or call saying that you?
So you inspected the electrical and the lighting existed.
Pardon?
You inspected the electrical and the lighting existed. The fixtures didn't show up until October 4th, I believe, but the poles were there, the wiring was through the poles.
Yeah, but the site wasn't complete at that point.
Correct, because there was a third amendment to the amendment of the conditional use permit. because the landscaping points had to get shifted from parking lot points to general yard points or something. But regardless,
So ultimately, Scott, it's, you can't give that until all the paperwork's in place and you can go there and say, yep, I'm completed, now I can give occupancy.
Yeah, typically.
Otherwise, in a situation no different than what I just explained on that property over by us, that could happen X amount of years down the road. And what's the measly $5,000 gonna get you? Not $40,000 with asphalt. So that's why we're having this conversation.
I personally, I would be fine with removing the completion surcharge as long as we add in a report 4 times a year, I'd say quarterly, for the plan commission, so we can see where things are with the development agreements.
Replace.
Jen, how many, what does Wausau do with theirs or another bigger municipality or mountain or what do they do? Do they do a surcharge or are they doing?
Cronin-Witter has development agreements and like a surcharge bond and they charge a lot more for them.
Yeah.
I'd have to ask Wausau. I don't know offhand. They may just do it with their TIF projects if they're giving money, but
Sure.
most of Wausau's in TIF, so where they'd have their developments.
I personally feel like a completion surcharge is, I just feel like we're doing unnecessary work there.
Well, in all honesty.
You gotta sign contracts.
In all honesty, Steve, it's another $5,000 that you shovel out and you go, well, am I gonna get this back? So that's a sore thumb, number one. People maybe get upset about it. You don't really realize when you're signing a developer's agreement that you gotta abide by it or else you're gonna get, so it's $5,000 less that the guy's gotta come up with and maybe saves face a little bit for the administration. And we actually are getting more teeth into it by having a developer's agreement anyway.
Is that a motion?
We have to defer this no matter what.
Somebody make a motion.
I think we can take action on
What's the
this.
question, Roy?
We have to defer no matter what tonight, don't we?
It would, so some of this is tied to the fee schedule, so it would have to go to the board, to remove that fee. So, I mean, I can work on a policy, I mean, I could take and suspend, I mean, we're doing development agreements on new projects anyway. We've got a couple of them
I
that.
got a note down on the bottom, staff will need to do some research on what ordinances, if any, we need to.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to, so I have to do that too. Yeah, that's a good point. This does come up and it's talked about in the zoning code and things like that. So I'm gonna have to go through and look at that and chapter 14.
Yeah, that's, I was assuming we could not
Yeah,
act.
so I didn't wanna go through all that effort if you guys were gonna say, oh no, I wanna keep
So
that.
you just wanna get a gut feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you guys are okay with me proceeding, we can put some.
You wanna just go around and ask so they have a verbal?
Jim, what would you like to do?
I'm fine with getting rid of the $5,000 down payment, going to a boilerplate development agreement, not one that is drafted by the attorney on every project. And then require staff to report to the planning commission quarterly is a good, of development agreements that are out there, development agreements that are closed, and then have some kind of aging on it. So, hey, this development agreement been out there for 18 months and it's still not closed.
I like the aging. Gary?
I agree. I would have just assumed that whoever does the report would just put notes on it that I've called or contacted. And waiting on lighting is backordered because sometimes lights were coming in for 6 months, 8 months, whatever, or fencing or whatever it may be. I completely agree. I'm for it.
So
I'm in favor of developers agreement.
I'm in favor of developer agreements also. I also like the quarterly reporting. And I would just add maybe with a note, because some of these will probably drag out for a year or two, so we don't have to ask questions about why each one is. You know, you might just put a brief.
Yep.
Kind of, you know.
Barb?
I agree that, you know, you can do that, but as long as you've got little notes as to why they're still hanging out there, not completed, you know, that.
Shane?
I think that development agreement, John, you outline all the responsibility of the developer, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
I think,
agree.
yeah, that's, should be done as a must. So,
Got what you need? Alrighty. Number 12, Metro-wide housing study, subsection A, regional housing assessment fact sheet 1.
Okay, so this is all together, and it's just kind of to give you a first glance at it. So I did have a meeting with the Metro Housing Group. This is the first draft from the RPC. And so what they're planning to do is they've got this public survey questionnaire that they would like to get out. They're gonna want the community help on that. They're gonna start scheduling some open houses. We're supposed to give them some ideas on potential people for some smaller kind of focus groups that they're looking for. So we did give them a list of our housing contractors. They're looking for people who, if anybody has any knowledge of someone who deals with some more affordable housing, that type of thing. They're looking for that too. So this is just kind of so you guys can take a look at it, start reading it. You will be asked to approve it, but not until the fall. So it'll come with some additional information. But this was just kind of the first, what they were putting out to the community to see if they were kind of on the right, I guess, going in the right direction. The news has gotten into this. I did get a call last week. I know the paper was doing something. I saw a Facebook request where people were asking. I mean, housing is a big, it's a big thing right now, especially with gas prices going up and everything costing more than that. So they're just trying to get a handle on. I mean, my big thing with them was what exactly is affordable, because no one really determined that. Everyone likes to use that kind of buzzword, but from this, we would then go forward to, using it to make some decisions in our, later on in our comprehensive plan on how we handle housing and how we're looking at land uses and that going forward, and even some zoning. So they're gonna kind of touch into that on ways to make potentially some changes to zoning. They may introduce some different things. From our standpoint, basically Wausau and Weston are the two communities that have kind of all the different housing types. A few of the other communities are lacking that way. I don't know. Did anyone get a chance to look at it? I'm just kind of looking.
I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. It surprised me. So we are expected to get a majority of it, and some of that is just because of being where we are, and that we do have that housing already available. Some of the other communities, just really did not want that in their communities, so they did not put that in. They're starting to now. You're starting to see some of that, but yeah. So it's just to kind of bring it out here. If anybody had anything, if you want to send me anything that I can forward to them, I will let you know when those meetings are, those open houses. There will be one down in this area. I just don't know exactly where, if we'll get it or if it'll be like in Rothschild. So, yeah.
Can I know we talked about affordable housing and what communities can do, and we talked about this a year ago. How can we get to the punch before the next community does, right? How can we make this affordable? How can we get those costs down? Has anybody, Keith, I know you did a little bit of digging and spoke with, I don't know if it was one of the other communities, this Abbotsford, or I don't remember who it was that we were chatting with, but I think you might have called or. But if we somehow figured out outside the box, when I say that is, if we were to take a piece of property, let's just say a developer owns the property, the village wants to let's just say it's sewer and water.
Oh, are you talking about over in the Green Bay area?
And I can't remember where it was, but I know Bill Hebert's.
Howard?
Howard, was it Howard?
Yeah, let's let Gary finish this.
Hebert was struggling as well. Because everyone in every community needs development right now. They do. They can't figure out why we can't get developers developed, but it's real easy. There's costs. There's nothing left. There's too much risk and not enough reward. So how do we, as a municipality or as a village, think of how do we beat the next community to the punch and be lucrative with something like this? And I'm trying to think outside of the box going, So do we say to a developer, if somebody approaches the village or staff or board that says, okay, hey, I've got 40 acres of property here. What if you, the village, put in the sewer and water, and then we charged $5,000 or 7 or 10 or whatever that number may be. I'm just going off of for the sewer and water hookup fee that maybe be part of the cost of the roads, maybe 10 grand, whatever it may be. But the developer can only make a certain set margin on after utilities costs are in there. Say sewer, gas, electric, cable. Because in some negotiations, like I've negotiated out in Mosinee, I got them to put, because of how many lots we did out there, I got them to, believe it was Frontier or one of them, I can't remember, Charter. They ran all the cabling in for nothing because of what they could get on an ROI. So if they negotiate that, that's their deal. But let's just say the developer comes in and says that and say, I can only make $5,000 a lot on this. It encourages development, and maybe it also encourages smaller development. And you can get affordable housing and do slab on grades with maybe in-floor heat and little P-TEC units or Mitsubishi mini split. But they could try to get more affordable housing into our community, which will help some of these things. And that's just me reading this weekend and thinking outside the box, how can we beat the next municipality or community to the punch and still make it feasible? We have to somehow think outside the box, because what we're doing right now is continually beating our heads against the wall and requiring them to put streetlights in, to put curbing in, put sidewalks in, trees in the, all these costs get dumped on the developer. And in order for you to come out, you might have 65,000, 70,000 lot. And people say, well, and that's what it's gotta be. It's not feasible, period. It's just not. So somehow we gotta figure out how to change that concept, or how to change this to make it move forward. Because right now, lots of municipalities are just sitting stagnant, not moving anywhere. I'm not saying the municipality has all this money to do either for the sewer water, but maybe part of it is connection fee. I don't know. I have to, Husheng, maybe you know a little bit more about where the fees are, costs are.
I think, if I may.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just.
We're living in the world of levy limits. So even though we have development that occurs, our levy is capped at what it is. So theoretically, the tax rate goes down for everybody as development occurs, but the village doesn't capture all that increment that we feel we're creating. Does that make sense? And I guess as you look at how the levy limits have played out for us, if we get $12 million of development in the village, it amounts to another $60,000 on our general tax collections to support operations. Now, that's not much when we look at all the other, the police and fire and other services that we furnish. So.
And then inflation on top of that.
Right. So I think the thing we have to keep in mind is when when a subdivision comes in, and I know we want development, but truth be told, everything that is put in there becomes a liability to the village to take care of. The streets, the sewer, water, everything. So if we're putting money into this, it should have some kind of return on investment, as we talk about. If we're starting to throw all kinds of money at it, it isn't gonna work. Now, I know that Village of Howard has created they actually do the development through financing through their stormwater utility is how it works. Their stormwater utility is somehow being able to, the stormwater utility is not regulated by the PSC. Our water utility is regulated, the sanitary sewer utility, I suppose theoretically could furnish some of that capital to do this. There'd be some other thing involved. Now, other communities are doing environmental TIDs. I have a call into Dave Johnson and Merrill because I know they're doing some things with TID in Merrill where they're offering some incentives to developers to help develop infill or redevelop lots that had some old dilapidated homes on. They got some infill areas that they're doing streets and so on and so forth on. But our dilemma too is that we can't, I don't know how residential TIDs, I say environmental TIDs, it's a residential TIDs, okay? I don't believe we're in a position we can create a residential TID. I think we can't create any TIDs until we get our, equalized value below the threshold number that the state has on TIDs. So we've had this very conversation with Heath Tappy in the last week. And, I know he's saying that we do participate in oversizing connections, there's things that we've done with the utilities. We could also offer to, install the utilities at the village's cost and have those assessed back to those lots. I think when that's been proposed to developers, they haven't really taken that up. That would be just like a connection fee though.
Well,
So, and I know Corona Winter did that in the past as well.
well, because you know why, Keith, you think about that. If you say, okay, the village is gonna bid out this sewer and water project, do you think the private guy is gonna get a cheaper price than the villages?
In the past, they did.
Well,
All these
that's
things,
typical, right? So why, if a
prevailing wage stuff.
they will let the village take care of it, they know they're gonna pay that much more in cost.
Is that true anymore? We don't have prevailing wage law anymore to
No,
apply with, so.
yeah, I don't know if that is the case. I'm not quite sure or not, but all I'm saying is there some possible way that we can figure out and think outside of the box like these other, like Merrill's doing or some of these other municipalities of how to make some development happen?
And that might come through some of this. I mean, the biggest thing that I heard on this call and that we were talking about is, are we actually building the right kind of houses? Because you always hear this missing middle. We don't have a missing middle problem. The problem we have is we have
Low or high?
low income and no high. So what's happening is the people who could afford the high are not necessarily buying high because either they're close to downsizing or retiring, or there isn't anything available.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say.
And so they're
taking the middle market.
They're taking the middle market, and therefore the middle people are taking some of the lower, so that's where the issue is that they're seeing in the Wausau area. So that was something that they talked about is, are we even building the right kind of things for people, or are people just settling? Because that's what people are building.
But we know strongly we need more economical, lower housing. We do. And it's unfeasible with the requirements that are put on any developer or what's expected of them to do. There's no possible way you could get it to be affordable with the pricing of everything. You just can't. And we all know that. The only way you do that is take a 40-year-old home, make it a rental, because it's on its value, right? And then it can be affordable from there on out. But anyway, I know it's a big.
I think that, again, I know Jennifer made a point there too about one of the things that was pointed out here, is it the right kind of housing? I don't know, I know you've done subdivision development. And I know we've had this discussion with other developers that, everybody wants the single family home and a 3-stall garage, so you got your boat slot and you got 2 cars, so how do we get to that smaller footprint, I guess, or more dense development? Heath Tappy's doing some twin homes. I don't know what he's saying. He's saying though that those aren't necessarily in a lot difference in cost.
No.
So.
I'll be honest with you, Keith. We're not doing the low income housing because you can't. So they're taking, their customer is a different level of customer. They really are. They're not searching for the low end customer. But we have a need for a low end customer because we have the statistics for it. But we can't get to that.
So hopefully this study can bring some of that out. We can have more discussions about this. I guess I'm certainly looking into some things. I know I was told, Plover and Merrill are doing some things, and we'll find out what they're doing. If it's so vastly different and so much more attractive, some of the challenge sometimes is the soil conditions or the requirements of the street. I mean, we don't want a street that's gonna fall apart in 5 years. Again, it's that liability issue that we end up taking on.
And some of it's, Keith, that the requirements in Crownwetter are way different than they are here. Right? The requirements are different in Merrill and Plover, and depends upon where you're at and what part of the community, because some parts of the community, you don't have to put sidewalks in, you don't have to put boulevard trees. I mean, that can really change the price on, you put sewer, water and a road. So that can really change the cost and impact on a subdivision or development as well. So, I'm sorry.
No, I just was gonna say, the only thing I would respond is say, to me, our best chance for affordable housing is, when I think affordable housing, I think of apartments.
$500 to $700. How you get 5 to 7, you can't build one for $500 to $700.
I mean, but I think it's a better chance when you got one roof with 20 people under it than 20 roofs, right?
Yes.
And part of what we were looking at in TID two is seeing if we can.
Mixed use, yeah.
Mixed use, right?
Yep.
I mean, to me, I just think, I think we put a plan in place to try and generate potentially some affordable housing. As it hasn't, nothing's come to fruition yet, but I just think, anytime I think of affordable housing, I'm thinking you gotta put more than one family under one roof.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start creating more roofs, you got more road, you got more connection fees, you got more, I think that's your best chance for affordable.
Yeah, well, I think you're having, I don't know what their requirements were, but that development where they redid that old nursing home, Kennedy Park, or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was supposed to be a real reasonable rental. And as it is, it costs so much just to renovate it. They can't, I mean, I think it's still less than 800, most of them, I think, are.
I'll tell you what, if you go in the first office, that when you walk in there, that's about as big as your room is.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and it's a very small type units, but even they couldn't do it, trying to just renovate.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't just say to somebody, go in here and do what you want and make rooms for it. I mean, you gotta have some regulations as to what you can and can't do, but building materials and everything are just, it costs too much money, and it has nothing to do with necessarily the regulations, although you've got to have those. I would hate to think we're gonna lower our building standards so you can put up some kind of a.
Oh, I don't think anybody's.
But it isn't just regulations, it's just the cost of materials and.
When I mean the regulations, Barb, it's when we, I had this discussion with Bill Hebert as well. Before, when Wausau used to put the road in, they would allow you to put the road base in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they would come back later after the whole entire subdivision was done, then they would pave it. Okay? And they would assess the person that's buying the house that way. That's a different way to do it. But all them costs are not upfront for the developer to sit on paying all the interest costs. Then there wasn't curbing or sidewalks and trees. All that stuff starts coming on and adding to it. So then now, instead of a $25,000 lot, we're at $45,000 or $50,000 to break even. And then hope like heck we don't, when you put an 80 lot subdivision, and hope like heck you can sell that 80 lots before the economy takes the crap, because that $1.5 million interest payment or $2 million interest payment on all the infrastructure isn't stopping, So it's a big risk. So sorry, I didn't mean to open a can of worms.
But that again is a reason that we would entertain. I mean, it's even discussed in our our water utility tariff about the possibility of, financing a developer main extension or main installation of mains in the subdivision. Certainly it could be extended for all subdivision, but nobody's ever necessarily taken up that whole idea. I think we threw that out there when we were talking with Heath Tappy, and he didn't really feel it was of any benefit, as I recall. But is that something we certainly leave out there? I think so, sure. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just kind of giving you the perspective that I got to take on it as looking out for the villages.
I get it, Keith. I'm just looking at it. You guys are in the best position. I don't know what villages, where all the buckets are and money comes from, because I'm from the private side. I'm just saying, I believe that internally we have to start thinking outside of the box, how to make this happen, whether, one way or another, how to make this more feasible to get something rolling and keep things rolling for the community. We see this downturn in the building. I mean, granted, what is the statistics on it? Was it 200 some homes where there was 400 or 700 or something like that in the prior 6 years, and now it went down from that to a couple hundred homes in the same time frame. So anyway, sorry.
Jan, do you have anything else to add to this for the housing?
No, it's just to introduce it, and if you guys have any comments, that you want me to get to the RPC. They're taking them in July, and then I'll let you know when the open houses are. They're gonna start August through October.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? Otherwise, we're gonna move on. Project updates.
Question though, quick question to Jen. They had this question here, are they asking for comments on that question?
Yeah, so if you have any, so this is gonna kind of run the gamut, so they're questions that are gonna be geared towards different people, because you're gonna have people who are currently renting, who are maybe looking for homes, so they'll answer different things, but this is what they're looking at having out there.
Are you asking us to have input on?
Yep, if there's anything.
So I think that's what Husheng was getting at, and I probably is that instructions that we have to do, is there anything more? Should we be looking at that and modifying or thinking that we want to add something?
If there's questions missing that you want them to potentially look at, let me know.
Some of the question I wasn't sure I can answer. Because some real estate people can answer those questions better than I do.
Well, this is a public survey, so some of it might be.
Starts on page 133. Oh yeah, Michael's got it up, huh? Sorry.
Yeah, so there's different stakeholders that they'll be giving different questions.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, project updates. Subsection A, update on Weston Avenue design process.
Did you want to do 13 first?
I thought I missed
That's just the
13.
building
Yeah.
permit.
Oh geez, I'm sorry. It's getting late.
Move to acknowledge.
All right, so moved by Husheng. You have a second?
Second.
Kern. Number 14, project updates, update on Weston Avenue design process.
So, Commissioner Cronin, Chairman here, I guess you had, I think, a couple of questions in the email, in the middle of last week, and we had not received the 60% plans until today at noon. Michael's prepared to put them up on the screen if that's what you like to do, make them available for people to view if they like. We had some discussion about these at Public Works today. You want to take a little spin through the plans at this point, or what would you like to do?
Sure, I'm fine with that. Do we have a number as far as cost, I guess, at this point, or?
Yeah, there is a cost estimate that came with it as well.
So this is for the east half.
Yeah, for the east half. Come on.
So from
Ryan
out all the way up to J. Okay.
Yeah.
That's correct. That's a 60%, right?
It's a 60% estimate, so it's not
Right.
set in stone. They're estimating a construction total of about $9.3 million from Ryan to J. So there's still some contingency unknowns, perhaps some wetlands that, they say is unknown at this time, so.
And Michael, what is the distance on that versus the remaining? Mileage wise or?
Yeah, so it's 2 miles from Ryan to J, and it's 1.75 roughly from X to Ryan. So it's not quite in the middle of the project.
Okay, do you expect that cost to go up or down? Probably up?
It really depends. I mean, asphalt is a huge volatile commodity,
Sure.
2 years ago, you could get it at, high 50s a ton. This year, I think we had some bids that came in at almost, 115 a ton.
Sure.
And in the middle, you have projects that are, 80 to 90 a ton. So I mean, right there, that could swing this project probably an easy $1 million.
I don't know what, Gary's close to construction industry, Roy, I mean, how confident can we be in estimates that are gonna be out there a couple of years? I mean, we were told by our architect just from last October till March that he recommended putting a 30% contingency on certain building items. So it's an estimate based on what we know today. And we have some question about whether there's enough in there for the right of way. At this point, we would be needing to retain a right of way agent to do the negotiation on any parcel acquisitions and easement acquisitions and so forth. appraisals. So that would have to be factored in, so we're still in that $10 million range on this half of the project. I think we had budgeted initially, or a budget estimate of, I think, 25 million, right? Total for the project.
What was the preliminary estimate for this section? Is it still 10?
Roughly half, I suppose, so it's a little bit, it's still within the ballpark of what we had in the preliminary estimate from a few years ago, in the TID one project plan amendment.
Dollars per mile should probably be more for the west side though, because it's four lane and you've got more, or not really.
There's less utilities, I guess, from X to Vine Kennel, the water and sewer lines already exist, so it's a half mile of water and sewer that's not included in the cost then for that portion.
And we're not replacing those?
No, those are, what, 20 years old?
20 years old, yeah.
Yeah, so they're still, they should have hopefully a closer to 100-year life.
I know just from having a conversation like with Gary, we keep coming back to this issue with where the water's being run. You had mentioned along 29 to service those properties might be up.
Well, I don't know what Michael.
And we've talked to AECOM about that, so they are looking into an alternate route with the water and sewer, particularly between Progress Way and J.
Okay.
That's where.
Between
Yeah, I think it's just so it's accessible.
Yeah.
It can be, why run it past somewhere where you can't even hook onto it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you can't hook onto it because it's in a wetland, then what's the point of bringing it through here, I guess?
Yeah. And elevation wise too, that helps with the gravity sewer service, just because the slope of the land and you can keep your cover on your pipe, whereas if you stay down by the wetlands, you run out of elevation. So
just out of curiosity, is that gonna increase costs doing that, or do you think that would be more cost effective or probably the same?
The only real difference would be the
water.
Or the right of way costs, trying to get those easements from those property owners. But if we're keeping it more on the highlands versus installing sewer through the swamp, it should be cheaper to install those lines than it would be.
Correct.
The other way too, so.
There's probably dewatering regarding.
Yeah.
I would say probably into that sandier area.
But again, we don't have to necessarily be as deep.
Yeah.
Right.
You look at continuing the sewer service.
Yeah, I understand the looping. We've talked about that. I just want to make sure that whatever's being done out there, that I don't want to run a water main through somewhere that we can't have people hook up to it. Otherwise, we're spending money for.
Yeah.
But
Randy, you're still back there, right? Do you have a problem with that sewer or water running through part of your property there to serve?
I think it'd be better along the highway versus down by the road, because you also got the pipeline to deal with.
Yeah.
And
I think the only thing, Randy, I know when I spoke with Michael on this, maybe last year or the year before, was that they thought they would come out of their existing subdivision. And it would probably be, there's that first lot that's kind of in a wetland, potentially between there and that first open lot, Michael, was it?
Yeah.
That they would try to get over to like by your site, which would be Sunbelt. Then they'd have to get up to the highway from there.
Oh, yeah.
Because otherwise they gotta go through, like Norcon has that, right? They'd have to somehow get through that to get up to the highway before they got to the front of your building. So if they came across into your property and then maybe shot a 45 up to the highway, then the frontage from there going all the way to Country Fresh Meats would probably be accessible. But I just brought it up at the last meeting as well, as why go through the swamp? Because we're never nobody in that parcel is gonna get permits to go across that wetland and hook onto it.
no.
It wouldn't do.
So what about, does Matthew still own a parcel there?
He does, yes.
Could you come through there, like get easement from the two property owners?
I guess the one thing we try to avoid is putting water and sewer lines through developable land, because then that kind of restricts what somebody can do over it in the future. So we want somebody to put a building, right where we potentially would need to dig up in the future.
Yeah.
So Michael, yours, you're thinking that you would do yours in that?
Yeah, you try to keep it more into that, village owned property there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I
So
mean,
you'd probably still have a little bit of dewatering until you got into the harder, heavier soils.
yeah,
Over kind of by where you're at, Randy, I imagine that switches, do you even got sand on that site by you, by Sunbelt?
So it's a heavier clay type sand.
Sure.
And down by the road there, I don't know, we had like 4 or 5 feet and then it's pretty much solid rock, I think.
Okay,
yeah,
What it is.
yeah,
so. It avoids having to blast and everything.
yeah, well, you sure don't want to do that.
So the discussion with the engineer on Wednesday was that, you know, they would look into feasibility of that or, you know, the kind of estimated cost. I think we were directing them to look more at the northern boundary of the swamp zone, not necessarily all the way up to the Highway 29.
Yeah, well, they're gonna look at seeing what they could do, perhaps almost running parallel with the gas line.
Yeah, on the north side.
Yeah.
Because it's on the south side, the gas easement is in the wetland.
Yeah.
So you'd have to be on the north side. So also the other question that I guess when we talk about the plans would be is, I think you and I talked a little bit about it a while back, is if they would go from Ryan Street to Zinzer Street, if that sewer would be brought through, or just water looping, if it's just gonna be looping, Michael, or was that proposed on here at all, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I just had the street profile up, but, you know, we kind of looked at where it made sense. I think, kind of going towards like maybe where the two Knightsky properties meet, you know, trying to figure out what could actually be captured, right? Like what area would actually potentially have gravity service to that point. So I know, again, the roadway is really what they're focused on initially, because that determines your right-of-way impacts, that determines your wetland impacts. And water and sewer can then be, you know, you can move a manhole or whatever.
Yeah, so the only thing that I had in question when I was looking at that, or when we talked, was can we save the expense of having that tied between there, and are we ever gonna get an ROI on it?
Yeah, so that was the question of where would it even make sense to maybe have the sewer go west, you know, because again, from gravity service, what would be able to feed that, right?
So that manhole that's in the end of Ryan, or in the middle of Ryan and Weston Avenue there, right? The one that, well, I don't know, is it in the middle?
That's yeah, I guess that shows a manhole there.
Yeah.
Currently.
So ultimately you have the driving range and you have the one house there. That's owned by the village right now, the driving ranges. And you have the one house that's on a holding tank. Then you have the park, all on the north side, right, Weston's Park. So ultimately we have, unless the village is looking for sewer and water for a outbuilding or something like that, you really have Knightsky's property, which is pretty wet as itself. And then I bought that stuff from Irene, but that's 7 foot of groundwater, so that it's very, very wet there as well. So I don't know how much development you're gonna really have in there to justify if it's worth running that there. The only thing I said when I talked to Steve a little bit was you potentially wanna loop that water to tie into by Ryan Street from Zinzer. I would assume you'd wanna, and that would probably be done in a ditch.
Yeah, or underneath like the multi-use path area.
Yeah, oh yeah, on that north side.
Yep. Yeah, so some of the water sewer stuff is still in the works. It'll show up as a line on here, but it's not.
So that's a moving target, yeah.
It's a moving target. It was really the right of way and wetland.
And is that something that the village can share, or is that can planning?
I can send a link out to these for you guys.
Okay, or is that on the website, Keith, or, you know?
I'll send a link to you on the website.
Just received it today.
I just got in and had meetings until it gets, well, I'm still in a meeting, so.
It's a pretty large file.
I imagine it is.
It needs a cloud drive link or something.
Okay. Yeah.
Otherwise, if you wanna.
Very detailed plans.
If you wanna set up a meeting and come in and talk to Michael or something, I guess we open to that.
Yeah, but I guess, you know, it is a 2-lane road with then turn lanes at, you know, Zinzer, Progress Way and.
Kind of like we all talked about earlier on.
Yeah.
He's looking for.
I'm sorry, I didn't even see it, I couldn't see it back there.
So, like Country Fresh, that comes off in J.
Correct.
So then there'd be Roland, there's a vacant lot, and then there's our property, Sunbelt.
Yep.
So is it feasible to really connect those, or do you need to loop someplace, or do you need to put sewer and water in there?
Well, the hard part is we've got 1, 2, 3 different dead ends currently on the south side. So the goal is to loop that, so in case there ever was an issue with, we have a water main break here, we all of a sudden don't have, the rest of that line out of water.
Right.
So, I don't want to have to make a phone call to Country Fresh and say, hey, sorry, we had a main break, you're gonna be out of water for the next few days.
Sure.
And the gas station, imagine the gas station's hooked onto that same dead end there, right?
They are, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in that future development out there would be on a dead end as well, right?
Correct, yeah. So we'd try to somehow then get back down into Weston Avenue, somewhere maybe around Country Fresh or Roland.
Right in that ditch area there.
So that we can get back to J, so
Yep.
Country Fresh is a part of a bigger loop,
Sure.
and not just the line, so.
Okay. Multi-use path too, all the way down, correct?
Correct, yeah, so it's showing on the north side. Kind of in these
Yes,
2 dots.
wanna talk
And
about
at Public Works, who Shane did mention, looking at the feasibility of a roundabout at Ryan and Weston Avenue as well.
I think some sort of better controlled intersection than what exists now.
I think I'm gonna slow down the speed a bit.
Oh, for sure.
Ryan.
Ryan and X, or Ryan and
So
Weston.
where they would go into the industrial park?
Literally right by your house.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, you talked about potentially instead of that being turn lanes, the semi or traffic or whatever would be able to get around there quicker, slow things down.
Slow things down because people drive 50 mile per hour and all
Yeah.
of that.
I think that's a good idea.
Yep.
I think it's safer and make it easier to drive in there.
Sure. Okay.
I don't have anything else.
I think the only hiccup that you'd have there, Michael, is that big, Scott, that big telephone substation or whatever you wanna call that on the south side.
Yeah, the corner.
South,
Nobody uses telephone anymore anyhow. You can't get anybody to repair it.
It's just
those
Frontier.
guys used to live over there,
The southeast corner.
south,
Yeah,
yeah.
they, right,
Right
at
there.
that time, GT.
How soon did
Frontier's
AECom
on
say they
one
were gonna have
side.
an answer back on the water bait out near 29?
I
don't know, we pinned them down and then they just said
They're gonna look into it.
Yeah, I mean, I did, whatever it was, a year ago, 2 years ago, just kind of did a quick check on elevations and, it does work. So then, once we kind of get a route figured out, I think they're gonna check with, A&R too, to see what regulations there are for running parallel or some of those things within or next to their easement. So,
Just keep us posted.
yeah, no, we'll just keep rolling.
Anything else? Subsection B, comprehensive plan update, includes comprehensive outdoor recreation plan.
So Sean is still looking at getting some quotes, to bring to
Randy?
the
Thanks, Randy.
board, to determine what route to go. So that one's still kind of sitting out there. I don't have anything really to update on it.
Do we have an ETA on the completion of that?
By the end of the year.
Okay. Subsection C, TIDS 1 and 2 updates.
So I we got a report from, Kristen. She's continuing to contact people along the corridor on Schofield Avenue and TID 2. And that involves some of you as well, so I'm not sure what contacts you may have had between last meeting and now.
She called me up.
Okay, good to know. The Realtor that represents the former Alpine Mobile Home Park property, indicated she has talked to, and Kristen's talked to them or her and, talked about, what potential mix of uses and densities might be, and suggestion was that, mixed use with commercial, retail, office on the main main level and residential above. The realtor seemed to like that idea, but she has not heard back from her. Evidently Raleigh Lacray and she have not been able to speak together. They've left messages for each other. I know Jennifer had been contacted, I think by Bill Schofield, but Kristen's also spoken with him about properties that he is working on at the far west side of the village, the former former lube place and the car wash down there, and then the adjacent former residential property there. I asked her, you know, if there's really been a kind of a cooling off of development interest, whether, you know, material prices are having a big impact. She just indicated she's heard lumber prices going down. I think we've heard the same thing. But there's still those supply chain issues that come up on many things. I know we're experiencing that with ductile iron pipe. I know Heath Tappy's been having some issues, I believe, on those type of things as well. Kind of asked if we need to be more aggressive on marketing and, you know, whether that's would be of any benefit. She doesn't really know what's holding developers back right now. She's gonna try to get some handle on that, she says. Suggestion was maybe we try to arrange a tour of the avenue. I guess we could explore that a little bit if we think that's something that we should be looking at doing. Whether that's gonna be of any benefit, I don't know. Maybe get your thoughts on that as I finish up my comments here. And then as far as how often we need to get updated, she's kind of indicated that maybe monthly is a little too often, but you know, we can try to update on any new significant developments if that's agreeable to everybody. Otherwise quarterly.
Have you heard anything on the old well drilling site there?
There was well, I think we mentioned last time that there was a used car dealer that was interested in it, and we pretty much dissuaded them because it wasn't gonna create any increment, and they thought somehow that because it generated sales tax, that it would be, that we somehow capture that. That's not the case. So we have not heard anything more on that one, but there was a developer supposedly out of the Eau Claire area that expressed some kind of interest in it, but Kristen said that they're really not the type of developer that you would want to be pursuing here. So I guess that's all we know on that one right now. So I guess it's not that people are, you know, knocking on the door to get at stuff at this point in time. I guess I don't know, you know, what more to say about that. We're kind of relying on her to have some eyes and ears on the ground on this thing, so.
I did see about 4 vehicles in the trailer park there with about 10 people walking around. So that was last week sometime when I went by there. Nice to see somebody in there doing something.
What about said one?
We know there's been a recent sale of a building that had the subway and radio station and whatnot, so we had to talk about the new owner there has expressed some interest in maybe a facade improvement, so just kind of in the early stages of that discussion.
Is Subway still there?
No.
I'm just saying that's where it was located,
That's what I
that
thought,
particular
yeah.
building.
They opted to keep the one open at the store on the other side of the highway, the gas
Yeah.
station.
Yeah.
I guess he didn't have enough, I talked to the owner, he didn't have enough staff or something.
Talked to the property owner, President Maloney and I were the property owner, has some land along Schofield Avenue and was trying to pitch that to some people, so not necessarily turning these over to Kristen unless we have some really good leads on those things, or at least letting her know that there's those properties out there, so I guess that's pretty much the extent. I think there is some interest in the remaining land on the site between Zinzer and Progress Way on Weston Avenue. We've had a couple of conversations with different, I think there may be as many as 3 companies interested in that. And I guess I should say that we do know that Weston Supply is
planning an expansion of their facility on the west end of their property as you come in from Ryan Street. So I think that's as much as I can tell you. Jennifer, am I missing anything?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Are any of these properties advertised on our website? I only see the three, the one you just mentioned, between Zinser and Progress, and the two adjacent parcels to that. I don't see any of these other.
So we used to do that. It's hard to keep up, and that's really a realtor's job. We have our properties that are for sale out there, and that's really all we can control. We've tried in the past to keep up to date on that. It changes so fast. We just kind of know which ones are available, and if people call in the past, I've, either contacted people I know who have land or the realtors who have it. But we don't have the manpower to keep that up to date.
And no, it wouldn't be advantageous to maybe put a link to Kristen about kid one or two, like call her? Or
We've been trying to kind of weed those out first, so she's not, we get the initial contact. If someone's just speculating,
Sure.
and then forward her the information.
I know in the past we've had some discussions on pulling land out of TID one and maybe reducing that footprint a little bit. What's the feasibility of doing that at this point with that Weston Avenue corridor plan?
I think we would need to, if you want us to analyze that somehow, that's a somewhat time consuming process. So I know what we have been advised, kind of bouncing us off of Greg Johnson from Ellers. And he's only speaking, from his perspective, but his thought, his advice would be that we complete Weston Avenue. That is our mission. And in terms of creating development opportunity, I guess that would be our, assuming that's our mission there. He's saying that his advice would be that we complete the project and close TID one as soon as we can after that is completed. We can look at taking some things out. I know there's uncertainty potentially. Is the state gonna again recalibrate their equalized values on manufacturing property or land in general, I guess, going forward, because that's what led us to go for the amendment, last amendment on TID one, because we went underwater in terms of our ability to pay back the debt in time. So I guess it's a discussion maybe to have philosophically with the board going forward.
That wouldn't be something that needs to take place at planning, then that would be more of a board issue.
I would think the strategic plan process would determine what areas we should be working on for things.
So yes, and the board has committed to going forward with the strategic planning efforts, so we're gonna be getting that geared up here shortly as we bring the proposal back. We've determined we're gonna work with Craig Rapp Consulting on that.
Okay.
So we'll have their contract massaged for Monday's meeting and then talk about a scheduling for the strategic planning process.
And Keith, I missed, what project was that for? Is that for?
It's a village strategic plan.
Okay.
Understanding what the village's goals may be, what not only do the boards and commissions want, what do the residents,
What are the priorities of the
what are their
village?
priorities, what do they see the
should be
village should be
working
working on?
Okay.
So, does that address your question?
I think
As
so.
well as possible right now?
If it needs to go to the board, I guess, how do we, does that need to get agendas so we can have a discussion on it for next week? Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody have anything else to add? D, site plans.
I'm gonna go back to B, because I think I misunderstood you. I was meaning that it was going to be approved, I want it approved by the end of the year. I want something from Sean here in the next month or so, because we need to get that going, so.
Yeah, I just have seen it on here for many
Well,
months.
it's kind of been in his hands because it's his plan. I will just kind of help him with it, but we need to get it going, so. And a lot of this stuff is all moving pieces and depending on what happens, and what's going on and what priorities were given. So, next month I will have the, impact assessment. We're working on finalizing that so that we can bring that back to you. I was working with Mark Roffers today on that. For the site plans we're currently working on, we did receive WASA supply, so they are putting an addition on, so we will start working on that. We met with them last week to discuss their project. We are still finalizing a building addition at Auto Select. We had some issues with them.
Where is he gonna add to it? There's no room.
I know. They're utilizing some space next door, so there is a small
Next
addition
door,
on the
east or
front,
west?
and they're changing.
East or west?
They would go to the west.
So he's gonna buy the guy next.
But
He currently, he bought some property over there from Shang already last year.
Yeah.
yeah, so he's been parking there and they're reconfiguring the parking and some of it and adding a small addition on the front.
I think he was only adding like,
It's a teeny tiny
yeah,
little,
10,
like
10
squaring it out.
front,
Oh, really?
across the shop. You know, like when you pull in there, there's the garages.
Yeah.
He wants to make more of a, like a
It's the office.
He's making the office.
reception where you come in and you take your, so.
Yeah, it's just a very small addition, but.
It's tiny, it's tight.
A lot of money for a little bit of square footage that he's getting.
I did talk to him before. I said, this is too small for you. You need a bigger place. He said, yeah, but. Anyway.
Yeah.
He does a very good business there.
And we're still working through from the forest. There's just a few things they're looking at. They keep changing up their site plan, so that one's still kind of out there. They have their building on order though, so. And that's about it. I guess we've got pieces of the community center that you saw, so I imagine some things will start coming in now after this meeting. In that project, they will be doing the corner, their admin building is part of that too, but they have a different contractor with that, so.
All right. Announcements and commissioner remarks. Jim?
None?
Good. Good? None.
Nothing.
Husheng?
No, thank you.
I'm sorry the meeting went long. I know there's a couple times some things, just try to help. When I'm here, try to help me keep things orderly and so we don't end up in situations where we have individuals arguing at the podium, I guess, so. Sorry. It's okay. Stuff happens. Role of the plan commission workshop.
So if anyone, you still have some time on that, so if anyone would like to attend, Husheng and Jim are signed up. Anyone else, let me know and I can get you signed up for that. It's in Nakusa in very late August, August 31st, so.
I'll probably go, Jen. I was just gonna check my calendar to make sure I can.
I think you have, I'll send you the date tomorrow, the cutoff to let you know. I saw that they had a cutoff date.
I would like to go if something opens up like late fall over the winter.
They
I just don't
do
have
these
time,
sporadically, so there'll be more options.
Okay, just keep me posted.
Are we going down individually?
That would be up to you guys.
That makes no more than four, no more than three in a car.
I would still have to agenda the meeting.
If you're gonna put more than 3 in a car, you better put out a meeting notice.
Yeah, you're there, yeah.
Okay. I'll go. I just checked. I can
Okay,
go.
I can send you up. I think I still have to agenda.
I don't know. But if I gotta drive it, no.
I got it.
They're actually feeding you a light. That's what it said. I don't know what that is, but.
Next regular meeting date, Monday, August 8th, 2022 at 6 P.M. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mumper.
Second?
Barb got it, or
Thank you, everybody.
on the question? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.